Chapter 190. Second Lang Jun, I've asked. The coachman came back and whispered to Jiang Pengji through the curtain to make sure she could hear him. After a while, Jiang Pengji asked, is there any sign of the Lu's residence in the carriage today? The coachman was stunned for a moment, and then he answered, Lang Jun, how can I disobey your orders? Although he did not know why his Lang Jun suddenly requested not to take any carriages with the Lu's logo, the Lus were not poor. They had a few carriages for all kinds of banquets and trips. Okay. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and said to the coachman, drive the carriage to Shi City first, okay. The coachman whipped the horse, and it moved gently, bypassed the crowd, and went to Shi City. After Jiang Pengji left, there were a few strong men sitting on the second floor of the tea house opposite. The tea on the table was cold, and there was no trace of it being touched. They stared at the gambling house opposite them. They had been waiting for a long time, and there was nothing special. They were the Meng's entourage, and they were there to protect Meng Liang on his way to Shangjing. The person who was being protected like the moon was the leader. The man's eyes were fixed on a carriage that was moving away, and his eyes were filled with doubt. He called the waiter over and pointed at the carriage that was not far away. Do you know which family it belongs to? The waiter stretched his neck awkwardly. He tried to identify it for a long time, but he could not think of any familiar family. It was a very ordinary carriage. The workmanship and materials were common, and even a rich family could afford it. The waiter was confused. Didn't ordinary carriages look like this? There was no family emblem on it, so who could recognize it? Hejian was not a big place, but it was not small either. Those who could afford to take a carriage were as bright as the stars in the sky. He was just a waiter. It was good enough that he could recognize most of the family emblems of the gentry families. It was too difficult for him to recognize the carriage. He laughed awkwardly and said, Sir, you are making things difficult for me. It is just an ordinary carriage. 9 out of 10 carriages in Hejian look like this. I really can't recognize which family it belongs to. At that moment, the group of people had taken off their armors. They did not recognize them for the time being. Leader, what do we do now? The leader did not speak, but his mind was still wandering. He raised his hand and asked one of his attendants to follow the carriage quietly to see which family it belonged to. He didn't know why, but he felt that something was strange. Most people wouldn't want to go near a place where a murder happened, except for those ignorant people who were not afraid of death. Was it not bad luck to die? Not to mention these families who could afford to ride in carriages. However, the leader had no choice but to give up when the attendant came back and reported to Jiang Pengji about the carriage. Leader, I don't think that carriage is suspicious, and it's not Meng Hun's group in disguise. The attendant who followed Jiang Pengji around the west and east districts had a helpless look on his face. Then tell me, why did they stop? The leader asked. The attendant was stunned for a moment, and then stuttered, I guess there are too many people watching the show, and they're blocking the way. The leader, yes, they were used to running amok in Cangzhou. They never had the concept of stopping for passers-by. They just ran amok. But, this was Hejian County. In other words, he had thought that he was smart, but in fact, he was just being stupid. The leader's face darkened when he thought about it. Or rather, it was as dark as the bottom of a pot. Leader, we've been here for a day, and we haven't found Meng Hun and his group. We can't catch them. What should we do now? Meng Liang had been kidnapped by Meng Hun. It was definitely not a good sign. But the leader thought that Meng Liang was not dead, and he had a good reason. The leader said firmly, go back quickly and tell the master about Second Langjuan's kidnapping. We can't afford to delay. Some of the attendants were still reluctant to make the decision. Leader, if something happens to Second Lang Jun, won't we be? The attendant made a gesture of cutting his neck with his hand. He looked very nervous. Who was not afraid of death? The leader shook his head and said, Second Lang Jun is definitely not dead. Meng Han doesn't have the guts. Otherwise, the attendant asked seriously, why? Isn't it simple? The leader opened the 2 bamboo slips and pointed at the one written by Meng Liang. He said with certainty, haha, haven't you noticed that Second Lang Jun's writing is neat, clear, and steady? It doesn't look like it was written by a panicked person. In other words, Second Lang Jun must have been sure that he would not die. That's why he wrote this letter. But this Meng Han is asking for 2,000 dawn of food. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death? 2,000 dawn of food was not a small amount. But food was not a big deal. As long as Meng Liang was alive and well, everything would be fine. Leader, you're so wise. A few attendants flattered him one after another, their mouths uttering flattering and auspicious words of flattery. So, now is not the time to be hesitant. We have to send these 2 bamboo slips back as soon as possible. As long as we can save Second Lang Jun, it will be a great achievement. Even if the master blames us, who doesn't know that Second Lang Jun's disappearance was because of his naughtiness? Even if there was a punishment, it would not be a heavy one. They would even be rewarded with a lot of money after the incident. Unfortunately, the leader thought that Meng Han and his men would be impatient and come to check on what had happened in the gambling house. That was why he decided to wait on the 2nd floor of the tea house across the street. But after waiting for half a day, all the bodies in the gambling house had been cleaned up, but there was still no sign of Meng Han. The leader said, pack up and get ready to go back to Zhangzhou. You guys. Where do you think Hejin County is? That you can come and go as you please? Hee, let's all go. A strange voice came from behind. The leader and his attendants were immediately alerted. They looked at the person who spoke. Let's go. You killed someone here and you still want to walk away? There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. These people were all guards of the Hejin County Governor's office. Each of them had a knife at their waist, so they were quite capable. The 2 sides were in a stalemate, but a strong dragon could not beat a snake in its own land. The leader of the Mengs snorted coldly. He said arrogantly, how can you catch me now? How are you going to send me back later? Hearing what he said, the people of Hejin County were instantly filled with righteous indignation. They wanted to pull out their knives and cut them into pieces. Stubborn. The corners of the guard's mouth froze. He looked extremely indignant. Chapter 191. How much power did the Mengs of Zhangzhou have in Dongqing? The Hejin County chief had only heard about it before. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he was furious. What did they mean by he was just a small county chief with a title but no power? What could a small official do to him? This is too much. This is too much. The Mengs of Zhangzhou are too much. The Hejin County chief was so angry that he flipped over the table. The fat on his body shook with his movement, and the mustache on his lips almost curled up. It was true that Hejin County was just a small county according to the size of the land and the number of people. But since it was a county, he deserved to be the Hejin County chief. How could he tolerate being humiliated by the servants of the Mengs? The guards of the Hejin County chief's manor who had escorted the people there also looked furious. The leader grinned hideously, raised his hand, and patted the shoulder of the leader of the guards. He whispered to him. I told you how you brought me here and how you sent me out. Why do you have to humiliate yourself? Let's go. The leader waved his hand, and the 20 or 30 people swaggered out of the Hejin County chief's manor. They were extremely arrogant. In the distance, Jiang Pengji lifted the curtain of the carriage coldly and looked at the arrogant people quietly. They were like roosters who had won a fight. The audience in the streaming room did not witness the whole process, nor did they see how arrogant those people were in the Hejin County chief's manor. However, based on the words of the leader, many people said that they were too arrogant. If they had the ability, why didn't they explode on the spot? Ah, I don't agree with the streamer. I'm so angry that my lungs are about to explode. Even Li Gang's son was not so arrogant. The leader was just a servant of the Mengs. How could he be so arrogant? He would not even survive the second episode in a TV series. Inja, to put it bluntly, not only did he survive the second episode, but he also walked out of the Hejin County Chief's manor alive. Ili Shabai, alas, that's how the ancient society was. Power could crush people to death, time passes between fingers, it's really annoying. Although I know that people's lives were worthless in ancient times, I didn't expect it to be so cheap. There were at least 50 to 60 corpses brought out of the casino. That was 50 to 60 lives. Pianxian Dia Wu, oh, I don't agree with the saying that time flies. The correct way to put it should be, the lives of civilians are like weeds, or even less than weeds. The lives of people with social status are precious. The atmosphere in the live broadcast room was a little quiet. Previously, when they stopped outside the gambling house, many viewers had already left due to the pressure. It was just that the queue for the live stream was always full. After a wave of people was pushed out, there would still be new people filling in. The number of people online had always been stable at 10,000. Jiang Pengji looked at it coldly for a while and suddenly sent a message in the streaming room. Host V, are you guys afraid of blood? The viewers in the live stream were dumbfounded. Why did he suddenly ask this question? Could it be that his nerve reflex arc was too long? The next second, Jiang Pengji added another one. Host V, if you're not afraid, I'll teach you the right way to kill. For a moment, the entire live streaming channel was silent, and the bullet screen was empty for a long time. In just a moment, her vision was drowned by the overwhelming number of 660 XS. Iya Chengzhou, daily brainwashing task, be impressed by the streamer's handsomeness, completed January 1st. Pianxian Dia Wu, let's not talk about anything else, just based on the streamer's straightforwardness, I have to give you a string of 666. Ili Sha Bai, do you still need a leg accessory? You can shout 666 in all kinds of positions. The audience in the streaming room was almost boiling. Jiang Pengji's lips had a trace of a sneer. If you're not happy, you'll fight back. Only a tortoise would swallow his anger. Let's go back first. The carriage's curtain was put down, and the coachman lightly whipped the rope. It didn't take long to get to the loos from there. Jiang Pengji directly asked someone to go to the stable and bring the horse over. I have to go out for some things. If father asks where I went, tell him I'll be back before the city gate is locked. Taking the reins, Jiang Pengji easily leaped onto the horse's back. She took a shortcut and avoided the crowded places. Jiang Pengji arrived at the city gate without a hitch. Seeing the indignant expressions on the guards' faces, Jiang Pengji calmed down. She murmured in a low voice, it looks like they just passed the city gate. I should still be able to make it. The inspection at the city gate was not slow. She quickly took the reins and mounted the horse, rushing in the direction of the group. The war horse of the northern borderline was pure white. It had a well-proportioned and handsome body, was good at long-distance raids, and had a long endurance. It was a rare and famous horse. It was the first time Jiang Pengji had ridden it, except for the gathering. They should be right in front. But the terrain is flat, and it's easy to be exposed in a short distance. Let's take a detour and get ahead of them. Seeing the messy and deep hoof prints on the ground, Jiang Pengji's eyes flashed. She slightly pulled the reins and let the horse gallop in another direction. The group of more than 20 people naturally wouldn't expect that someone was following them, waiting for the best time to strike. One of the attendants looked a little worried. He asked the leader, if the master blames us for abusing the Meng's name, how can that be considered abusing? If it weren't for those people in Hejin County, we would have been at the next station by now. Second Lang Jun was kidnapped by Meng Han and his gang. Now is the time to save him. Can they afford to waste such an important time? The leader didn't say anything. It was another attendant who spoke. It was not the first time that he had used the Meng's name for his own benefit. Shut up, all of you. It's more important to get to the next station as soon as possible. The leader pursed his lips. He was anxious. Since the leader had spoken, the others didn't dare to say anything. They all lowered their heads and hurried on. Because of the delay, they couldn't get to the nearest station. The horses were exhausted and needed a rest. The leader looked at the sky and wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. Let's rest here first. He sat on a small stool and rested. His whole body was covered in sweat. The others also looked tired. They had rushed to Hejian County after receiving the news from Meng Liang, but they were too late. Meng Han had already kidnapped Meng Han. In order to send the scroll back to Zhangzhou as soon as possible, they had to continue their journey. In other words, they hadn't slept for a day and a night. They wanted to go to the nearest station to rest and prepare enough food and water to feed the horses, but they still didn't make it in time. Leader, we're out of water and food. If they had known this would happen, they would have restocked in Hejian County first. Now they were in the middle of nowhere. It was too cruel. Just send 3 people out to look for him. Rest for an hour. Don't be late. Hejian County was surrounded by deep mountains. There were many ferocious birds and beasts. With their skills, it was easy for them to hunt small prey. On the other side, Jiang Pengji was hiding nearby. She could hear their conversation clearly. Chapter 192. Those horses are good horses. Why don't we take some? It's also a fortune. Jiang Pengji hid in the dark and carefully observed the group. When her eyes fell on the horses, she couldn't help but feel excited. Although those horses were not as good as the best horses, they had excellent bloodlines and belonged to the Meng stable. The Meng's was the only one among the 4 noble families that started with military achievements. They also owned the largest stable in Dongqing. Zhangzhou was located at the intersection of trade routes, so it was very convenient for all kinds of business. The Mengs imported many famous horses from the northern borderline or the southern man. After several generations of breeding, most of the horses in the stable were of excellent quality. However, they only sold the inferior horses. The best and the best quality horses had to be offered to the main family of the Meng family or given to the Meng family as compensation to the army of the Meng family. The royal family of Dongqing wanted good horses, so they had to buy them from the northern borderline or the southern man at a high price. By chance, they learned that the Mengs also had good horses, so the emperor hinted in various ways, hoping that the Mengs would offer a batch of good horses to him. What was the result? The Mengs did not take the emperor seriously at all. They offered a batch of inferior quality horses as a tribute, and bluntly said that the best horses from the stud farm were to be sent to the Mengs army. Not a single one of those good horses was allowed to flow out. This made the emperor of Dongqing very angry. However, the Mengs were indeed not to be trifled with. The emperor of Dongqing was already burning with anger, but he had to maintain an open-minded and hearty appearance. Jiang Pengji didn't want the horses at first, or she didn't even think about it. But their owner was going to die soon. Wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't accept them? As a good girl who didn't like to waste any resources, Jiang Pengji said that the horses were now hers. What if she didn't agree? Hold it in. He sent 3 experienced followers to search for food and water, while the others rested and recovered their strength. I heard that there are many bandits in Hejian. Do you think the 3 of them will run into them? They sat down to rest, and the attendants started chatting. Hey, as long as they are not blind, which bandit will give us trouble? Not to mention 3 people going out together, even if there's only one person, which one of us from the Meng family army doesn't have the imposing manner to fight against 10,000 people? What's so scary about a few mobs? Don't you think so? At the mention of the Meng army's prestige, the attendants suddenly felt a surge of confidence. Indeed, in the whole of Dongqing and even the other 4 countries, who did not know of the reputation of the Meng army? They had guarded Sangzhou for many years and helped the royal family of Dongqing protect the vital parts of the country. Wasn't it all thanks to them that Dongqing was able to celebrate peace and prosperity? That's right. But in my opinion, the strongest among us is still the leader. Even that Meng Hun can't compare to you. A follower gently flattered him, and the group of people seemed to have received some sort of hint. Flattery flooded their leader like a tide. The corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. His heart swayed, and he waited until he was satisfied with the feeling of floating on air before he reprimanded her with a stern face. The leader furrowed his brows and seemed to be very displeased. We're asking you to fix up now, not to gossip like a bunch of gossipy women. If you don't want to rest, then say so earlier. Meng Hun? A stray dog who betrayed his master isn't qualified to compare to me. The leader is right. We were wrong. How can that hypocritical stray dog, Meng Hun, compare to you? One of the attendants quickly changed his words and flattered the leader with his glib tongue. This attendant clearly had a face full of righteousness, but his eyes darted around from time to time, looking extremely restless. When it came to flattering, he was more active than anyone else. The other attendants immediately followed up and opened their mouths to say, Meng Hun is not qualified to compare to the leader. If you want to compare, throughout the whole of Dongqing, only the Count of Zhenbei's residence is qualified to compare to the leader. I heard that they were beaten up in the northern borderline again. In my opinion, if the leader was the leader, with your talent, you would definitely be able to turn the situation around and beat those bastards in the northern borderline back to their grandmother's house. After hearing this, the leader was in a good mood, as if he was shouting a piece of ice in the hottest days of the year. His whole body was icy cold. The few of them talked about everything and flattered the leader. After a quarter of an hour, the 3 attendants from before still hadn't returned. Of course, they couldn't come back. The 3 attendants were experienced in surviving in the wilderness, but compared to Jiang Pengji, they paled in comparison. She quickly found the nearest water source and laid in ambush, waiting for the 3 prey to take the bait. Soon, the 3 figures came together. One of them said in surprise, "There is water here. You're the best. Don't talk anymore. Fill the water bags first." The 3 of them were carrying many empty leather water bags. If they were to fill all of them and bring them back, the weight would not be light. Jiang Pengji looked at them coldly and squatted down beside the pool. She steadily raised the bow in her hand. She took out 2 arrows from the quiver and quickly drew the bow to a full moon. Swoosh, swoosh, the 2 arrows sank into the brains of the 2 attendants, piercing through the back of their heads. They were instantly killed. The 3rd person was originally seriously filling the water bag with water. Suddenly, he noticed that the surface of the water beside him was dyed red with eye-catching blood. He was slightly stunned. The 2 companions who were talking and laughing with him just a second ago opened their eyes wide in disbelief and fell headfirst into the pool. Enemy attack. 2 words suddenly popped up in the mind of the 3rd person. The water bag in his hand fell to the ground and wet the soil by the shore. He jumped up abruptly and pulled out the broadsword from his waist. He vigilantly looked around. Following the direction of the arrows, he did not see any traces of anyone. How many enemies were there? Where were they? For a moment, these 2 questions popped up in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more nervous he became. He tensed up and stayed on guard for a long time. Still, no one attacked him. It was as if the 2 arrows that killed his companions appeared out of thin air. The person looked at the bodies of his 2 companions and nervously pursed his lips. Then, he gritted his teeth and staggered away. Ye Chengzhou, Host, you let them go just like that? Letting a tiger return to the mountain will cause endless trouble. Gyumii, although I think killing is very bloody, the host's situation is a special case. You can't generalize. Letting the enemy go is harsher to yourself. That person went to inform the others and called everyone over. Can the host deal with so many people alone? Muyu Qingfeng, I want to convince myself that the host can kill more than 20 people, but the host is still a bean sprout, right? Lu Lanting's body was only 12 years old. Compared to the burly men who were 7 feet tall, she was as petite as a white rabbit. Just the difference in physique alone made the viewers in the streaming room nervous. They could not help but break out in cold sweat for Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji did not care about the fish that escaped the net. Naturally, her target was not just 2 people. Chapter 193. Host V, don't worry. Letting one fish go is just to attract more stupid fish. She sneered, leaped up, and landed on the dense tree trunk. Her footsteps were light as she walked away. The enemy was in the light while she was in the dark. She always had the initiative. Thanks to the high mountains and deep forests in Hejian County, it was very convenient to hide. Besides, Jiang Pengji knew how not to leave any traces. She shuttled through the forest freely like a dragon in the sea. Bad news. Bad news. Leader, there's an enemy attack. The surviving follower ran towards the crowd in a panic. He almost couldn't catch his breath. His lips were pale, and he kept muttering, enemy attack. 2 of our brothers were killed just now. What? Enemy attack? And 2 of our men were killed? The leader suddenly stood up from the small stool, took 2 steps forward, approached the surviving follower, and said sternly, what enemy attack? The follower gasped for a while, and finally could barely tell, just now, I was fetching water with the other 2. Suddenly, 2 black figures flashed by and attacked us with arrows. We were careless, and the other 2 were shot in the head, and they died. Died? The leader's eyes widened in disbelief, and then he became violent. The people he brought were killed by a sneak attack outside. It must have been done by the bandits near Hejian County. They were really bold. Then you came back just like that. The surviving follower's eyes were red, and he said in a tearful voice, Leader, I also want to fight those 2 beasts to avenge my brother, but, I still have to save my life, so I came to report to my brothers. My brother's life can't be lost in vain. If others were to find out that our Meng family army was ambushed and killed by 2 bandits, where would we put our faces? The leader listened with a gloomy face, and his hands clenched into fists. He suddenly took out his whip, and he was full of anger. These mobs have gone too far. The leader gritted his teeth, and then he ordered 20 people, let's go to avenge our brothers. Jiang Pengji's 5 senses were no longer suppressed, and she could hear their conversation from this distance. She couldn't help but laugh. The audience in the streaming room could also clearly hear their conversation with the help of the system. Suddenly, there was a sea of 2,333. Gu Mimi, you have a big imagination. You said it as if you saw it with your own eyes. He doesn't even know where the streamer is, and he said he saw 2 black figures. Is it just because the streamer shot 2 arrows at once? That's ridiculous. Lo Siji Lianmeng, if the streamer makes 3 consecutive kills later, shouldn't they say that there were 5 people who attacked them? Muyu Qingfeng, they have to say that. If they don't make the situation more dangerous, how can they explain that they were so scared that they peed their pants, and left their brothers' bodies, and ran away? He was still too young. If he was a little more thick-skinned, he might have directly bragged that there was a platoon of bandits watching him, that he was skilled in martial arts, and that he had broken through the encirclement left and right, and finally escaped. Everybody lift chestnut together. Ha ha ha, I'm impressed by the comment above. Jiang Pengji waited in a good mood. Although she was not used to using ancient bows and arrows, it was the same as a sniper. Compared with a sniper, she preferred to move from one place to another after shooting. Bows and arrows could not be compared with a sniper rifle. The former's speed and destructive power were too small. Squatting in the same place was simply telling the enemy where she was. Host V, Lo Siji Lianmeng, I think your suggestion is acceptable. Jiang Pengji drew 3 arrows from the quiver, raised the bowstring to a full moon, and did not move. She squinted her sharp eyes, waiting for the best opportunity. There were 5 people left to guard the horses and luggage. They seemed to be standing loosely, but they were actually very alert. The young man who had survived was left behind. He ran in a panic and accidentally fell twice. He looked very embarrassed. His companion comforted him. Look at you. 2 bandits scared you so much. Look, hasn't the leader already brought people over? If the leader goes out, not to mention 2 bandits, even an entire bandit stronghold will be wiped out by him. The surviving follower was still shivering. His forehead was stained with 2 pieces of mud. Blood mixed with the mud. He smiled reluctantly and was about to look up to thank her when a shadow blocked the sun above his head. The next second, a warm weight fell on him, catching him off guard. Warm, scarlet blood dripped onto his face and almost into his eyes. Whoosh! Jiang Pengji could not shoot 2 arrows at the same time because of her position. It was difficult to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so she shot continuously at a very fast speed. Enemy, enemy, enemy attack! The attendant raised his hand and pushed away his companion, whose brain had been pierced through. His vision was restored, but there were 4 more corpses around him. Before they could react, they had already passed away. The horse that was quietly nibbling on the grass did not panic at all, nor was it frightened. It was as if the 4 arrows that took their lives just flew out of thin air, without a trace of murderous intent. Jiang Pengji glanced at the follower's almost collapsed expression with satisfaction. Her eyes darkened, and she turned back to the previous pool. At that moment, the leader had brought people to the pool where the incident happened. 2 bodies were floating alone, blood stained the water, and the 2 arrows that had pierced through their brains were still hanging on them. The leader's face darkened and he asked people to go forward and fish up the bodies. He raised his hand and pulled out one of the arrows, not caring about the colorful liquid splashed on his body. He turned the arrow over and did not see any special personal marks on it. It seemed that it was really done by bandits. The leader pondered and said, "Go check around and see if there are any traces of other people's activities." After a search, the result was regrettable. It seemed that the 2 people who attacked them were ghosts without feet. There were no other footprints or traces of other people's activities on the ground. The leader did not believe it and went to check for himself. It was true. At that moment, someone could not help but murmur in his heart, they said they saw 2 shadows. Could it be ghosts? Shut up. How could there be ghosts in broad daylight? Although someone refuted, everyone was still a little scared. At that moment, a cold wind blew through the forest, making their scalps numb. Leader, we can't find any evidence here, and there are no traces of other bandits. Should we continue to search? The leader broke an arrow. It seemed that he could not understand why there was no trace at all. How did the other party do it? Ghosts? Only mediocre people would believe that. The leader did not give up and checked again. In the end, he had no choice but to go back. A total of 28 horses were still in their original place. If they were robbed at that time, they would suffer a loss. Wait. Chapter 194. Just as he finished speaking, an arrow pierced through the air, directly piercing through the chest of a person who was standing relatively far away. Ugh! A muffled sound rang out, and everyone looked towards the source of the sound, just in time to see the man raising his hand to cover his chest, a look of disbelief on his face. They saw his burly body slowly fall backwards, blood flowing out from his completely shattered heart, staining the ground red. Before he died, his eyes were still wide open as if he had seen a malicious ghost. The scene was creepy. Could it be that there were really malicious ghosts in the forest? Don't panic. You are a man. Why are you afraid of ghosts? The leader shouted, which brought everyone back to their senses. He raised his sword and walked a few steps toward the direction where the arrow came from with a gloomy face. The grass and shrubs could not withstand the sharpness of the sword and were chopped down to the ground. No. Still no trace. Where was the ambusher hiding? The leader looked at the ground where there was no trace of a living person. His expression was like a wall with a few cracks. Ah, another scream was heard. Another man was pierced through the chest by an unknown arrow. The direction of the arrow was far away from the leader. The leader hurried back and saw that the man was dead. Just like the previous man, he was shot in the heart and died. He checked the wound and could no longer control his violent emotions. Since he began to work for the Mengs, he was used to being flattered and flattered. When had he ever been humiliated like this? He was toyed with by a bunch of nobodies who came out of nowhere. What was even more hateful was that the other party had never revealed themselves from the beginning to the end. Playing tricks on us. We don't need to be afraid of them. The leader stood up and said to the others, "Are you all stupid? They pointed their arrows at you and you didn't feel it at all. You are still standing in twos and threes." The leader's scolding made the others tremble. They did not dare to be so careless and spread out in twos and threes. Instead, they formed a more orderly formation. Compared to the unknown, malicious ghost, the leader was more terrifying. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji had already quietly moved to another place. How stupid. It doesn't feel challenging at all. Jiang Pengji smiled. The enemy was in the light while she was in the dark. She had the initiative in her hands. Regardless of whether the enemy gathered in a group or dispersed in twos or threes, it was all useless unless they could feel her breath or detect her murderous actions in advance. Killing aura seemed illusory, but it really existed. It was just that it couldn't be touched or seen. Some martial artists worked hard to train themselves and improve their five senses. They would vaguely develop a mysterious intuition. When others stared at them, they would feel it, not to mention the killing intent that was filled with malice. The leader was indeed capable. His five senses had also reached such a level that he could sense the killing intent and stares of others. However, how could Jiang Pengji's standard be the same as theirs? A genetic warrior whose killing intent could be sensed by others was already the worst of the worst. It was simply impossible for him to participate in a mission. Jiang Pengji also had rich experience in sniping and killing. She succeeded every time. If she could not perfectly restrain this killing intent and reduce her presence by 100%, according to the five senses of the people in the future, it would not be called a sneak attack. It would be telling the enemy her position and trying to kill them. Then what was there to play? The audience in the streaming room was watching excitedly. It seemed that after the shock of seeing blood for the first time, they had calmed down. Wanyue, #laughter cry. I have a déjà vu of a high-level golden godly outfit massacring the novice players in the novice village. Aizhuahua, it's obviously a godly character who has ascended to immortality. Zhongfei Xingchen of last night, it's better to be crushed. It feels good. I like the feeling of killing a bunch of small monsters with one slash. Jiang Pengji curled her lips. Huddling together would only make them die more quickly. Host V, I'll show you what it means to kill two birds with one stone. As soon as she finished speaking, the arrow had already pierced through the air. Jiang Pengji changed to another place without looking back. Swoosh, an arrow pierced through the air. The crowd only noticed its existence when it got close, but it was too late. Another two. Jiang Pengji did not have to look to know that she had taken down two more enemies. At that moment, the number of casualties had reached a terrifying number. They did not see the shadow of the ambushers from beginning to end, but their companions fell one after another. The leader was safe and sound in the middle, but the two people who had been killed were very close to him. They fell in the direction of the leader. With such archery skills, they can't be bandits. The leader pushed the body that fell on him away. A trace of unwillingness flashed across his face. However, he also knew that if they continued to stay in the dense forest, they would only silently lose more people. Could it be, the people in Hejin County seeking revenge? One of the followers guessed with fear. The leader snorted coldly and said contemptuously, "Those people don't have the guts to." If this was not the case, that was not the case. Then who was the culprit? Could it be that a malicious ghost really appeared in broad daylight? For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. Seeing them retreat and then looking at the reserves in the quiver, Jiang Pengji's smile was somewhat evil. Since they had already set foot on the road to hell, how could they escape? It was not difficult for Jiang Pengji to shoot while moving. The only difficulty was that she had to pay attention to hiding while moving. The atmosphere became more terrifying and gloomy. The tense atmosphere and the shadow of death shrouded everyone's hearts. Dong, the head of one of the followers who fell at the back of the group, was pierced through from the temple by an arrow. He was directly nailed to a tree trunk not far away. "What are you panicking for? Retreat." The leader heard the strange sound at the back of the group. His heart suddenly sank. He knew that another life had been quietly taken. The same scene happened one after another. Jiang Pengji was like the most experienced hunter. It was as if she had thoroughly understood the dense forest. No matter how the group of people ran or panicked, she could maintain a fairly safe range. She was like an experienced cat, and those people were the mice that she chased. She destroyed their psychological defenses bit by bit. When she was done playing with them, she would kill them with one blow. The leader was about to have a nervous breakdown after being shot one after another. Even though he looked calm on the surface, he still could not hide the guilt in his heart. Yes, guilt. He couldn't sense where the arrows were coming from, and he didn't know what their target was. Chapter 195. No way. It couldn't go on like this. The only way was to leave the dense forest and go to an open area. When there was nothing to hide behind, he wanted to see how the enemy would attack. In this regard, Jiang Pengji could clearly tell the enemy that those who deserved to die would still die. It had little to do with where they died. It was not easy to escape from the dense forest. Originally, he had brought 20 followers with him, but now there were only 2 left. The closer they got to the exit of the dense forest, the more frequently Jiang Pengji shot. Seeing that they had escaped, any normal person would feel relaxed. It was also the best opportunity to attack. However, when the leader brought the remaining 2 survivors to the place where they had rested, what they saw were 4 bodies lying in a pool of blood. The leader's eyes were wide open, and his fierce look scared the 2 followers who followed him. The only survivor was the follower who had gone to fetch water and was lucky enough to survive. Why? Of the 5 people who stayed, 4 were dead, and only this one was alive? Of the 3 people who went to fetch water, 2 were dead, and only this one was alive? The anger in the leader's heart could no longer be suppressed. He strode forward and grabbed the follower's collar. "Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me, are you a spy for those villains? Did you deliberately lure us there?" The leader glared at the follower, who had been scared to the point of delirium. His face was smeared with sticky blood. The audience in the streaming room was speechless. Wait, what kind of weird development was this? Why did they suddenly have internal strife? No, internal strife was internal strife. Why did they suspect that the unlucky guy who had been scared twice by the streamer was the murderer? Fengji Liao Yuan, ha ha ha, I feel sorry for him. First, he was scared twice by the streamer, and now he's suspected to be the murderer. Shuang Xiang, sorry, really very sorry. No, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurts. Did the leader become a stick? Lo Siji Lianmeng, I bet a spicy stick. This is definitely an Easter egg left by the streamer on purpose to test their intelligence. It was no wonder that the viewers in the live streaming channel were so happy. This turn of events had shocked everyone. The followers around the leader were all brought here by himself. He knew everyone's background, so it was impossible for there to be a spy. Of course, it was also possible under extreme circumstances. Some viewers in the live stream room were mocking him, but naturally, there were also people who had different opinions. Chestnut is delicious, am I the only one who thinks the leader's reaction is normal? After being scared by the streamer so many times, and seeing the people around him die one after another, the psychological pressure was unimaginable. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to maintain a normal level of thinking, and they would definitely subconsciously suspect the most suspicious person. Who was the most suspicious person at the moment? It must be the survivor. Putting himself in their shoes, if he was one of the members of the team, facing a completely clueless enemy, and every time the enemy attacked, one member of the team would definitely die, and no one would know if he or she would be the next target, the fear of death lingered in one's heart. The Grim Reaper's footsteps were hot on one's heels. Even a person with a strong mental defense would collapse in an instant under such a dense frequency of attacks. However, from God's perspective, the leader's judgment was indeed laughable. At this time, the audience in the live broadcast room was silent, and then they agreed to speak. Not to mention anything else, they just said that the host had too much bad taste. Jiang Pengji smiled. Her bad taste was yet to come. Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me. The leader grabbed the other's collar and roared as he questioned. At the same time, Jiang Pengji steadily raised the bow, drew an arrow, and aimed at the target. Swoosh! In the next moment, blood burst out and covered his face. His neck seemed to be strangled by an invisible hand, and it forcibly stopped him from speaking. That's bad taste. Jiang Pengji snorted coldly, and another wave of 666 flew by in the live broadcast room. My host, you're amazing. Jiang Pengji was too lazy to struggle with the last few shrimps. She raised her hand, put her finger to her lips, and whistled. The horse neighed, and the sound of hooves came from afar. A vigorous white figure galloped out of the dense forest. The other horses seemed to be summoned, and they all ran toward the white horse. The scene was chaotic. Game over. Jiang Pengji drew her bow for the last time, and killed 2 birds with 1 stone. She took the lives of the 2 people beside the leader. She had said that 1 messenger was enough. Let's go. Pack up and go home. The white horse galloped toward her. Jiang Pengji smiled, ran 2 steps forward, and jumped on the horse's back. The pure-blooded warhorse of the northern borderline was indeed worthy of its reputation. Only then did the leader see who had ambushed them. Just as he was about to draw his bow and shoot an arrow, the horse galloped wildly, kicking up a cloud of dust and blocking his line of sight. All he could see was the buttocks of the horse and the small figure that had already become a small dot in the distance. Humph. The leader was so angry that he threw the bow and arrow in his hand to the ground. None of the 27 followers around him survived. Who is it? That's too much. The leader spat out these words through gritted teeth, and a smell of iron spread in his mouth. The only thing he could be thankful for was that his horse had a good relationship with him, and it was not affected by the white horse. Otherwise, he would have to walk to the next station with an empty stomach. In the future, I will take revenge. Jiang Pengji did not care whether he wanted to take revenge or not. Even his life was deliberately spared. If it were not for the messenger, he would have died and gone to hell to show off his arrogance to the king of hell. Jiang Pengji hung up the bow and put the quiver back. She leisurely sat on the horse's back and let the white horse walk around as it pleased. She led a group of brothers to look for food. The horses were intimidated by the white horse's imposing manner, so they all became obedient. It seems that you are the king of horses. Jiang Pengji saw that and patted the horse's neck with a smile. The horse responded with a loud snort. Its beautiful and smooth mane swayed slightly with its movements, brushing against her wrist and making her feel a little itchy. What a proud little girl. Yes, it was a mare, but it was more hot-tempered than any stallion. It liked to kick its hooves at the slightest provocation. Jiang Pengji carefully counted the number of horses. There were exactly 27 of them. Host V, this is a big win. It seems that robbing the enemy to help me is good for my health. What do you mean by robbing the enemy to help me? Host, your worldview has fallen to the ground. Do you want to bend down and pick it up? The viewers in the streaming room said that they had lived for a long time, but they liked Jiang Pengji's carefree and unrestrained behavior. So, their worldview had been led astray by the host? Chapter 196. Jiang Pengji jumped down from the horse's back. The white horse was very understanding. It rubbed her cheek affectionately and then ran to the side to nibble on the grass. I wonder when I can eat pears. Looking at the pear trees by the banks of the Yishui River, Jiang Pengji took a deep breath. Her nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of pears. At this time, no one was holding a gathering on the bank of the Yi River, so there was no one on the bank at all, except for the constantly moving horse butts. Jiang Pengji walked straight to the shore. She kicked off her wooden clogs and took off her socks. She dipped her feet into the water and sighed. A cool feeling spread from the tip of her toes to the rest of her body. Jiang Pengji placed her hands on the stones by the river and leaned back slightly to look at the sky. Shu Shu loves lowly, I was quietly lurking, but the host's feet blew me out. Lo Siji Lianmeng, I think this is today's benefit. The foot control group is blessed. Lu Shi was, after all, a spoiled child. Whether it was riding a horse, shooting a gun, or running, his skin was always a little delicate. Now, his feet had a few red blisters, burning hot. When he touched the cold river water, he shivered in comfort. Looks like I still need to practice more. It's not good to get blisters so easily. Jiang Pengji was bored. She used the tip of her foot to stir up ripples on the surface of the water. When the blisters were no longer so hot and uncomfortable, she prepared to go ashore. However, before she could pull her feet out of the water, she found a tall young man in a lake blue scholarly robe standing not far away. He looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, with skin as delicate as flawless porcelain, bright eyes, red lips, and white teeth. His thin, moderately thick lips were curved. This was a face that easily gave people a good impression. It seemed that he was smiling at everyone. However, at this moment, the young man pursed his lips tightly with a hint of anger. The bunch of people in the live streaming room who were obsessed with look started to shout again, and all kinds of flattering comments flooded the bullet screen. Durian-flavored milk, I can't take it anymore, I can't take it anymore. What a beautiful young man. Ah! Although I know that ancient times were very cruel and dangerous, the moment I saw this young man, all those hardships go to hell. Kojiao Qifan, I'm not convinced. Why were the ancient people so good-looking? Didn't they all say that they were ugly? Host Jingjing Shangwa, although the host is my true love, the moment I saw the young man, I wanted to climb the wall. Such bullet screens almost blocked Jiang Pengji's vision. In the end, she had no choice but to block some of them. Jiang Pengji looked around and confirmed that there was no one else but her. Did that mean that the young man was angry at her? The young man's porcelain-like face showed a little anger. He looked at her accusingly, as if she had done something infuriating. No. What else had she done other than soaking her feet and raising more than 20 horses? Could it be that those free-range horses went to take advantage of him? Just as he was puzzled, a bullet screen in the live broadcast room inspired him. Aizhuahua, haha, by the way, is that handsome young man drinking water downstream? It seemed that he was quite angry. Jiang Pengji was speechless. She lowered her head to look at her feet that were still soaking in the water. She then raised her head to look at the young man's almost red face. She was speechless. She was to blame. She calmly put on her socks and wooden clogs. Jiang Pengji whistled and the big white horse galloped over. Behind it, there were a total of 27 well-proportioned horses of different colors. Obviously, the big white horse had become the leader of the horses. Jiang Pengji didn't even need to deliberately drive it. Jiang Pengji murmured, "Nowadays, horses are becoming intelligent." She sat on the horse and glanced at the young man who was still standing in the same place. She moved the reins and signaled the big white horse to go over. Jiang Pengji sat on the horse and bowed to the young man. "May I know your name?" The young man was very tall, but he was still a head shorter than the big white horse. When the big white horse lowered its head and snorted at him, the young man hurriedly stepped back with a bit of panic on his face. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji patted the horse's neck and signaled the little girl not to bully him on purpose. "Judging from your clothes, you don't look like a local." The young man calmed down and looked at her with mixed feelings. After a while, he bowed back and said, "I'm from Langyi. You can call me Hanyu." Hanyu? What about his courtesy name? Jiang Pengji subconsciously thought of this question. After all, the ancient people's naming habits were really annoying. But then she remembered that only close friends or elders could use courtesy names. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "My name is Lu Shi. I'm a local of Hejian. I saw you staring at me just now. Do you have any difficulties?" The young man's face became even uglier when he heard the question. Jiang Pengji laughed in her heart. The audience in the streaming room complained that she was too mean. Han Yu was choked by her straightforward question, but he couldn't just say that he just drank some water to quench his thirst. Han Yu's face became even uglier when he thought of that. He had no choice. His water bag was empty and there was still some distance to go into the city. He could only fetch water from the spot. He didn't expect that someone would soak her feet in the water. Should he be glad that she was not using the toilet? Han Yu lowered his head subconsciously and looked at Jiang Pengji's feet, which were wearing socks. He felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. Jiang Pengji said again, "I was rude just now. My feet hurt a little because of the long journey. I just soaked my feet for a while and found that you were looking at me like that. I thought that the horses around me provoked you. Did they do anything to you?" Han Yu's pale face looked much better after hearing that. His white cheeks became rosy again. "The horses didn't make fun of me. Are they war horses?" Han Yu said. He glanced at the horses that Jiang Pengji mentioned. He seemed to find something and his pupils slightly shrank. "I don't know if they are war horses, but they are definitely good horses." Jiang Pengji smiled and stroked the mane of the big white horse. The horse rubbed against her palm intimately and licked it from time to time. "I took Whitey out for 2 laps and let it go to find food by itself. I didn't expect that it would bring back so many horses. I was also very surprised." Han Yu was very surprised. He looked at the big white horse with sparkling eyes and said, "This horse has a well-proportioned body and strong hooves. Its eyes are full of intelligence and it has a ferociousness that normal horses don't have. Is this a good horse from the northern borderline? It should be. My father specially sent it to me." It is said that it is a good horse that was carefully selected from the royal horse farm in the northern borderline. Jiang Pengji said, I don't know much about horses, but Whitey is full of intelligence. It seems that it can understand what I said. In the whole family, I am the only one who is close to it. Jiang Pengji's words were really shameless. Chapter 197. Compared to the white horse, Han Yu was more concerned about the other 27 horses. They were from the Meng's horse farm. Horses of such quality were usually provided to the Meng's army. Outsiders couldn't buy them. Now there were 27 more horses, which made Han Yu feel a little uneasy. So, Han Yu asked, do you know who the owner of these horses is? Jiang Pengji sneered. She never asked for the names of people she killed, and there was no need to. They were all dead anyway. But she said, I don't know. Do you know? Han Yu said with certainty, this is a fine horse from the stable of the Mengs in Cangzhou. Only those with a high status in the Meng's army are qualified to own such a fine horse. Lu Langjun is in trouble, Jiang Pengji said carelessly, why? It's just a few animals carrying people. How can they kill people? Han Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly put on a serious face and said, not only will they kill people, but they will also implicate the whole family. Is it that serious? Han Yu saw that she didn't believe him, so he explained the stakes to her very seriously, don't doubt me, Lu Langjun. There was a tragedy in Meng County in Cangzhou. Someone stole a horse belonging to the Mengs, and the whole family was involved. They were trampled to death on the horse farm. I didn't steal these horses. They came here by themselves. Jiang Pengji said seriously, but what you said reminds me of one thing. These horses are indeed easy to get into trouble. I have to find a way to get rid of them as soon as possible. Han Yu was speechless. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly. Langjun, you said that I'm a thief. Since I've already taken the blame, why don't I just sell all the horses and make some money? No matter how angry the Mengs are, they have to find me first. Han Yu was alert and smart. He immediately understood why Jiang Pengji's attitude toward him had changed so much. He immediately apologized. You don't have to be so angry, Lu Langjun. I used that tragedy as an example to tell you to think twice before you act. The Meng family is powerful and arrogant. Ordinary people can't fight against them. I have no intention of slandering you for stealing. Jiang Pengji tightened her grip on the horse's belly and the white horse took 2 steps forward. She said proudly, it doesn't matter. Since I dared to accept these troublesome little fellows, I naturally have my own reasons. Seeing her like this, Han Yu didn't continue to insist. Maybe she really had the right to be arrogant, and he would only annoy her if he tried to dissuade her. The two of them had only met by chance, and there was a misunderstanding at the beginning. Naturally, there was nothing much to talk about, and they soon parted ways. The live stream viewers felt that it was a pity. It was rare to see such a handsome, sunny boy. It would be a pity if they did not lick his boots for a while. To avoid encountering people who knew about horses, Jiang Pengji took a shortcut and leisurely let the white horse carry her to the farm. Wow, what a big horse! So high! The children in the village had never seen so many horses. A bunch of naughty children came forward, their faces full of curiosity. Everyone wanted to reach out and touch the horse's hooves, but Jiang Pengji didn't allow it. War horses were hot-tempered. If they accidentally angered one of them, they would lose their lives if they were rewarded with a hoof. Langjun. Langjun, these, Jiang Pengji jumped off the horse. Xiaoyu, you came just in time. Ask Coach Meng to bring the horses into the farm. Remember to tie them all up. Su Ke thought that was not the point. The point was, didn't Langjun always say that he was very poor, and that he needed to be thrifty here and there, even to the extent of losing his mind? So, where did he get the money to buy so many war horses? Even though Su Ku didn't know much about horses, he still had the basic insight. He didn't know how good the horses were, but he knew that they were indeed excellent. So, where did Lang Jun kill people and set fires? How did he get so many? Su Ku accidentally blurted out what was on his mind. Jiang Pengji tilted her head and stared at him, which made his hair stand on end, as if he was going to explode in the next second. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji just nodded seriously and said, "Xiaoyu, you know me best." Su Ku was dumbfounded. The viewers in the live stream almost burst out laughing. Although he was not as handsome as Han Yu, Su Ku was still very handsome. Lang Jun, you, really, killed people and set fires. Su Ku didn't know how to react. However, when he saw Jiang Pengji's half-smile, Su Ku suddenly realized that something was wrong. "I killed people, but I didn't set fires," Jiang Pengji said seriously and added, "Setting fire to the forest is a serious crime." In Jiang Pengji's era, wood resources were scarce. Only the rich and the aristocratic families could afford pure wood furniture. In order to protect the decreasing forest resources, the relevant regulations were introduced. Setting fire to the forest was a serious crime, and it could lead to death. Su Ku heard that and felt slightly relieved. No, he didn't set fire, so he couldn't kill people. At that moment, he carefully counted the number of horses. Minus the one that belonged to his Lang Jun, there were 27 left. 27? Thinking about the number and the killing that his Lang Jun said, he seemed to understand something. "Anyway, I took them from the Mengs. It doesn't cost me anything." Jiang Pengji raised her hand and patted Su Ku's shoulder. "But the horses raised by the Mengs have special marks. People who know horses can easily recognize them. This is going to be a problem." Before Su Ku could react, Jiang Pengji had already made a decision. Find a way to sell them. They can probably be worth a lot of money. Sell the horses. Su Ku's mind flashed with the approximate market value of the horses. Horses used for transportation were usually not cheap, and a horse like this was worth dozens of times more. But, won't it be a pity, men always had some characteristics that never changed, no matter what time it was. For example, men in Jiang Pengji's era had a special love for mechas. Some people even joked that mechas were men's true love. In this era, men seemed to be like this as well. They had a unique love for strong and healthy horses. Jiang Pengji said, "I can keep them, but I don't think it's necessary. I killed those lackeys of the Mengs and only left one alive to report back. If they know that these horses are in my hands." Su Ku was suddenly shocked and immediately sobered up. He was still very rational when it came to his personal interests and interests. "If that's the case, we'd better find a way to sell the horses as soon as possible. It's fine even if the price is lower. We can't keep them and cause trouble." Su Ku had already started to calculate in his mind how much money and food the horses could bring them. "Yes, but I don't know how to sell them. We'll need to find a slightly more professional person." Jiang Pengji smiled. The Mengs were a jinx to others, but they seemed to be a blessing to her. Chapter 198. According to Jiang Pengji, it would be better to sell the warhorses so that the Mengs wouldn't trace them back to her. Su Ku even started to make a budget, but Meng Han put forward a different opinion after he heard about it. "I don't agree with your decision. The loss is too great." Meng Han licked his dry lips and looked at the plump and strong warhorses with a burning gaze. For a general, a horse that they liked was like a second companion. It's better to hide them in the mountains for a while and wait for the Mengs to die down before plotting other things. Jiang Pengji focused on the first sentence. "How great is the loss?" Meng Han said, "For example, a good warhorse like this is worth 70 to 80 taels of silver." That's the price of a fair deal. If you sell it to a horse dealer privately, they will buy it at a much higher price. Usually, they will reduce the price by 40 to 50%, that much? Jiang Pengji asked. That's at least a horse dealer with a conscience. If they bully someone who doesn't know the trade, they will be even worse. Warhorses are different. If they have internal injuries, they will be worthless. That's why they are more expensive. But if they are sold privately, the price will be reduced even more. Meng Hun sighed and raised his hand to stroke the mane of a maroon warhorse. The horse was strong and the muscles under his palm were tight and full of strength. It was fascinating. Su Ku was in a dilemma. It would be a loss if he sold them, but it was too risky to keep them. Even if they were hidden deep in the mountains, they would still be found. Jiang Pengji looked down and thought for a while. I'll listen to you this time. Anyway, we got them out of nowhere. No matter how we deal with them, it won't be a loss. We will need to train riding and shooting in the future. With them, at least we don't have to buy extra horses. It will save us a lot of money. Su Ku asked, but if that's the case, and someone finds their tracks and suspects, Jiang Pengji reacted quickly. When she agreed to Meng Hun's suggestion, she already had a solution in mind. It's not difficult. I originally wanted to move the troops training from the farm to the mountains, Jiang Pengji said. Jiang Pengji said, but not now. Find a way to hide these horses. It doesn't matter if they are exposed. The Mengs can't do anything to me, Jiang Pengji smiled innocently as she spoke. After all, I'm just a powerless aristocrat. How could I have ambushed 28 of them, killed 27 of them, and left one alive? Isn't it more believable to say that Meng Hun did it? Su Ku almost couldn't hold back the smile on his face. Before Meng Hun joined the team, you could trick him, but now that he was a friend, you still want to trick him like this? Do you have any shame? What was eye-opening was that Meng Hun actually felt that it made sense. That's true. Ordinary people would definitely think so. Although the young Lang Jun is skilled in martial arts, how could he be compared to the followers of the Meng family? These horses are in your hands. You can say that you bought them from a horse dealer in the black market. What can the Meng family do to you if they want to settle accounts with you? Meng Hun gave a simple and honest smile. If an ordinary person told the Meng family this, he or she would definitely be in trouble. But Jiang Pengji had someone to rely on. It was just 20 horses. The Meng family didn't lack them. What they lacked was an excuse. What they lacked was face. Jiang Pengji's reason was reasonable. Would the Meng family dare to go against the Lu family for 20 horses? If that's the case, these horses can be kept in the mountains. But they are hot-tempered. It's better to find someone who has experience in raising horses, so that they won't get hurt. Jiang Pengji made the final decision. Meng Hun's smile deepened. 27 horses. No matter what, he could at least get one, right? The maroon horse next to him was not bad. Both its appearance and temperament were to his liking. Su Ku saw that and secretly put his hand on his forehead. He had a headache. His Lang Jun killed and robbed people without saying a word. Even though it was the Meng family that was robbed and killed, his Lang Jun was born in a noble family. The Lu family didn't lack anything. Why? Why did his Lang Jun become such a gangster? Meng Hun next to him was the same. He was fine before, but now he seemed to be affected by his Lang Jun. No. How long had it been since they hooked up? The speed of their influence was too fast. Su Ku looked like he had nothing left to live for. He watched Meng Hun call people to take the horses away. The food that these war horses usually eat should be different from that of ordinary horses, right? Meng Hun said, of course. They eat more carefully and more expensive. The veins on Su Ku's forehead bulged. Those horses were all masters who needed to be served. Alas, I hope the books will be sent to the Mengs soon. Otherwise, Lang Jun won't be able to keep them. Su Ku was in charge of the accounts. He knew the financial situation best. They still needed the support of the Lus. The entire troop, including 40 to 50 mouths and 27 horses, was counting on the Mengs. Meng Han was speechless. One was marked by the company one kept. Maybe Meng Han was not the only one who had changed. Su Ku had also become more shameless. Their family's Lang Jun was really poisonous. Feng Huayu, you made me look for you so hard. Feng Jin planned to find Jiang Pengji that day. He didn't expect to hear a familiar voice as soon as he got into the carriage. He opened the curtain. Hey, it was an acquaintance. Wenbin? Feng Jin got out of the carriage. The joy of meeting an old friend flashed across his young face. Why are you here? They greeted each other, and Feng Jin welcomed the good-looking young man in a lake blue scholar's robe into the door. I was preparing for the assessment. I wanted to invite you, but I didn't expect your third brother to tell me that you accompanied the fourth prince to Hejian. It's not far, so I took a detour. Maybe I could meet you. I saw you from afar as soon as I entered the city. The young man had a bright smile on his face. He was not as reserved as ordinary people. His eyebrows were full of vitality. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. Wenbin, you came at the right time. Do me a favor. What's wrong? Han Yu raised his eyebrows and smiled. Are you entangled with some passionate girl? They were friends who grew up together and they were the same age. Feng Jin let go of his usual calmness in front of Han Yu. Look at you. You are getting more and more improper. I really don't know how Master Yuanjing taught you. Feng Jin patted Han Yu's shoulder and whispered, the fourth prince likes to hang out in the brothels, but he calls me out every time. I can't stand it. Could it be that the fourth prince is interested in Huayu's beauty? Han Yu had an indescribable expression on his face. Feng Jin coughed and lowered his voice. Of course not. I don't like to go to those brothels. He didn't like to go there, but he was called out to go there. It was okay to refuse him once or twice, but he refused him every time. Even a fool would know something was wrong. Chapter 199. Han Yu raised his eyebrows and teased, so, what do you want me to help you with? He doesn't know you well. If he wants to drive you away, just pretend that you don't understand. Wu Majun went to the brothel every few days to make friends with Lu Shi. He liked to invite Feng Jin along every time. Now that Han Yu was here, Feng Jin had an excuse to get away. You should have just rejected him directly. What can a useless fourth prince do to you? You are just trying to save face, Han Yu said carelessly. Feng Jin was not valued, but he was still the second son of the Feng family. If he didn't want to do something, Wu Majun couldn't force him to do it. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. A leopard couldn't change its spots. It was his nature, and it wasn't easy to change it. Wu Majun was annoying, but Feng Jin didn't want to offend the fourth prince yet. There was no need to make it ugly. Han Yu still had the same temperament. I haven't seen you for a few years. I thought you would be less temperamental after you became Master Yuanjing's disciple. I didn't expect it to get worse. Your temperament is quite similar to the good friend I've made recently. Perhaps the two of you will get along well. Han Yu raised his eyebrows and said with interest, there are not many people who can be praised by you, Feng Huayu. Not to mention that his temperament was similar to his. She is a wonderful person. Feng Jin thought of Jiang Pengji, and the smile on his face became wider. Han Yu was quite surprised. Tsk. Could it be that the good friend Huayu is talking about is actually a beautiful lady? Is she your confidant? I think you asked me to help you get rid of the fourth prince so that you could have some time to meet your confidant. His smile was so sweet that Han Yu felt like he was going to be blinded. Feng Jin's smile became more and more helpless after hearing what Han Yu said. Although his good friend was indeed a woman, she was not a confidant. He didn't know what Han Yu was thinking about. Of course it's not a wife, and it's not a close female friend. It's a good friend. Wenbin can't slander Feng Jin's style just because of his experience. I originally wanted to introduce the two of you to each other, but now that I see that you have a big mouth, I think it's better to forget about it. Feng Jin and Han Yu were good friends who grew up together. They were as close as brothers and would occasionally make some harmless jokes. Hey, don't. He must be a rare young talent to be praised by Huayu. I want to get to know him. Only then did Feng Jin let go of Han Yu. If Wenbin had come a little later, I'm afraid I would have gone to find Lanting. Han Yu couldn't help but be interested in the Lanting that Feng Jin had mentioned. He wanted to see what kind of talent Lanting had. As a student of Master Yuanjing, Han Yu had seen too many young talents who claimed to be gifted by the heavens. One or two of them tried to be Master Yuanjing's disciples, but what was the result? It was either an exaggeration or an unworthy name. There were only a few people who could catch Han Yu's eye. Han Yu said, "It's not too late to visit now." Feng Jin hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right. Because of the addition of Han Yu, Feng Jin specially wrote a visiting card. Otherwise, it would be too rude to bring someone he didn't know directly to his door. Unfortunately, the concierge told Feng Jin that his Lang Jun had been away for some time. Did Lanting say when he would come back? Feng Jin asked in a good temper. The gatekeeper thought for a moment and said, Lang Jun only said that he would come back before the city gate is locked. Before the city gate is locked? Looking up at the sky, it was obvious that he couldn't wait any longer. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you to tell Lanting that I've been here. The gatekeeper said respectfully, it's no trouble at all. Lang Jun is my Langjuan's good friend. This is what I should do. Feng Jin had no choice but to return to the carriage. Han Yu was playing with the jade tassel hanging from his waist with his fingers. Are you not at home? Feng Jin nodded. He thought for a moment and said, since you are here, why don't you go to Yaoji? Yaoji? Another strange name. It seemed that Huayu had made a lot of good friends while he was away from Shangjing. Feng Jin saw the confusion in his eyes and explained, Yaoji is my good friend. Her name is Lu Heng and she is also Lanting's cousin. Han Yu said bluntly, since I have nothing to do, I might as well go there. Feng Jin shook his head with a bitter smile at Han Yu's attitude. With Wenbin's temperament, if he encountered any setbacks in the future, he would suffer a lot. Jiang Pengji didn't come back until an hour before the city gate was locked. She rode a tall horse and slowly returned to the Lu's house. As soon as she came back, she heard from the gatekeeper that Feng Jin had come to see her. Huayu? Jiang Pengji asked, did he leave any other message? The gatekeeper thought for a moment and shook his head. Lang Jun only asked me to tell you that he had been here. He didn't say anything else. Oh, I see. Jiang Pengji felt relieved. It seemed that it was a normal visit and he didn't encounter any difficulties. But the gatekeeper hesitated. What? The gatekeeper stammered, the one who often goes with Feng Langjun has come to see you again. Jiang Pengji tried not to think too much. What did he mean by, always goes with Feng Jin? It felt like there was an affair going on between them. Did you say that Wuma Jun came again today? Since the last time at Ingchun House, the frequency of Wuma Jun's visits was frighteningly high. But Jiang Pengji often went out, so she didn't run into him. The gatekeeper said awkwardly, yes, I heard from other servants. He seems to want to marry the second Nyangzi, what? Marry the second Nyangzi of the Lu's house? Jiang Pengji was stunned for a while. Then she remembered that there was a sister who had never shown her face in the Lu's house. However, her stepsister was not even 9 years old this year, right? Didn't Wu Majun want to marry Jingxian? Why did he change his target to his sister of a concubine? Or could it be that this person wanted both of them? Jiang Pengji's eyes turned cold. She pursed her lips and looked extremely unhappy. After returning to the house, she went straight to see Lu Shi. He was reading some documents seriously. Lanting, you're here. Lu Shi put the book aside and smiled. Sit next to me. Jiang Pengji asked directly, Father, what do you mean? If Lu Shi had not hinted or misled Wu Majun, he wouldn't have known that there was a daughter of a mistress in the Lu's house. For some reason, although the siblings were in the house, they were scarily invisible in the eyes of others. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Lu Shi asked, What? There is a rumor in the world that Wu Majun wants to marry my sister. Lu Shi said, It's not a rumor. I did agree to it. Jiang Pengji. Lanting, I swore in front of your mother's grave, Lu Shi said. I won't let those who hurt her and this family live a good life. But my sister, Lu Shi said meaningfully, I only have your mother in my life. Jiang Pengji suddenly understood. The children in the house were not Lu Shi's biological children? If that was the case. She couldn't help but look at Lu Shi's head. Chapter 200. Father, you mean? My sister, Jiang Pengji withdrew her gaze. She did not want to be too obvious and hurt his dignity as a man. It's just a grudge between the previous generation. I'll tell you in detail when everything is settled. Lu Shi caressed her hair and said gently, You don't have to listen to the intrigues in the backyard. You don't want to dirty your ears and change your temperament. Did you agree to marry my sister to Wu Majun to avenge my mother? Jiang Pengji asked. At the same time, she was deep in thought. If that was the case, there must be something special about this stepsister's identity. Yes, it's a very important part. Lu Shi's lips curled into a sinister smile. It was as if there was a cold lake deep in his eyes. I wanted to wait a few more years, but Wu Majun came to me on his own. He must have some ulterior motive. I'd like to see his expression when he finds out the truth. It'll be interesting. She killed Min for her own ambition. She should pay the price. She asked, Who killed my mother? Lu Shi did not answer her. He sighed and said, I told you. It's a grudge between the previous generation. I don't want you to be involved. I know where your ambition lies. The world is vast, and that is your goal. I, your father, will settle the score for your mother. But, Jiang Pengji felt that things were not that simple. Lu Shi was hiding an important truth. If you want to do something for your mother, then promise me. As Lu Shi spoke, he leaned forward and whispered in her ear word by word. It was as if he was making a solemn vow. Don't let anyone get their hands on the throne of the world. You can only win. You can't lose. Jiang Pengji's heart skipped a beat. Even though Lu Shi had learned some things from Master Liaochen, it was the first time he told her that she had to win. She asked in a low voice, Will the person who killed my mother fight with me? Lu Shi couldn't give a very clear answer to this question because he didn't know the details. The only thing he could say was, I don't know, but if you want to be the ruler of the world, it won't be wrong. Who cares if she will fight with you? She won't be able to beat you. Just remember today's conversation in your heart. Even if you are talking in your sleep at night, you must not leak even half a word. You must not leak anything. Even though Jiang Pengji didn't mind Lu Shi's serious advice, she had to take it seriously. What's more? Lu Shi smiled sarcastically. How could someone who only knows how to suck up to you compete with you? what could she rely on? Tossing and turning men's bodies, seductively asking for sex. It's the biggest joke in the world. A woman? Jiang Pengji was surprised. She thought Lu Shi wanted to deal with a man. Lu Shi obviously didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. His daughter was too cunning. The more he talked, the more information he would leak. Before the situation became clear, he didn't want to dig up the past. Lu Shi wouldn't be worried if she was getting stronger. But now, it was clear that it was still not in its infancy. It still needed to recuperate and accumulate its foundation. Lu Shi was in no hurry. He had waited for so many years, and he didn't mind waiting longer. As long as he could see that woman's head fall to the ground before he died, everything would be worth it. Your sister's matter is settled then. Lu Shi's voice was calm, but there was a hint of chilling pleasure in it. Jiang Pengji was not a compassionate person. Lu Shi had already hinted that his sister had a special identity. If she continued to speak up for her, it would seem a little stupid. But didn't father say that Wu Majun and Jingxian? Could it be that he wants to enjoy the bliss of having two wives? Lu Shi said, let him worry about it. In any case, Wu Majun would not let his stepsister become his concubine. It was even more impossible for the daughter of the Wei family's first wife to become his concubine. Naturally, Wu Majun had to cancel the marriage. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to leave Hejian County alive. On one hand, he promised Lu Shi to marry his daughter, but on the other, he wanted to take Wei Jingxian's engagement. Wasn't he courting death? But father, Jingxian and I have broken off our engagement. The Wei family is interested in marrying Wu Majun. Although they didn't say it officially, some well-informed people know about it. Now that Wu Majun has changed his mind. Doesn't the Wei residents have any objections? Lu Shi was a little surprised. He did not expect his daughter, who had been so insensitive before, to think about this. Don't worry. It's just gossip. The Wei residents did not admit it. They just need to say that others guessed wrongly. Lu Shi smiled and said, have you forgotten that there was another person at the gathering other than Wu Majun, who was of equal status and had a brighter future? You mean Feng Jin? Jiang Pengji thought of her good friend. Feng Jin is the second son of the Feng family. His father is the head of the imperial secretariat, Feng Ren. He comes from a noble family. Isn't he better than a prince who is not favored and feared by the government? It is said that the daughter of the Wei family should be married to someone of high status. The daughter of the Wei family is barely a match for him. Jiang Pengji did not expect such a plot twist. Will it work? It's in the bag, Lu Shi said calmly. Marriage is about matching two surnames. If it is fated, it will happen naturally. Jiang Pengji was speechless. But you are on good terms with Feng Jin. If he really marries the daughter of the Wei family, it may affect the relationship between you two. No matter how they broke off the engagement, Wei Jingxian would always be labeled as Lu Shi's ex-fiancé. Feng Jin knew that their relationship was pure, but a man's mentality would always be a little stiff. Especially when Feng Jin and Lu Shi had more contact in the future. They would visit each other and Lu Shi would see the married Wei Jingxian. He was afraid that Feng Jin would think too much. Jiang Pengji only wanted to touch her forehead and say, how overthinking. This was not the era where everyone was gay. Seeing two people of the same sex getting along well, one could speculate that they were in an impure relationship. Lu Shi did not know that Feng Jin had long known that Jiang Pengji was a girl. Anyone who married Wei Jingxian would feel disgusted, but Feng Jin would not. Jiang Pengji said with certainty, that won't happen. Huayu is not an ordinary man. She was not worried that Feng Jin would feel disgusted, but she was worried that Wei Jingxian would. If the two of them were fated to be husband and wife, she would have to keep a distance from Feng Jin. She could not cause a family conflict, could she? But for now, she did not have to worry too much. Nothing was set in stone yet. Lu Shi praised, Feng Huayu is indeed not simple. It was a pity that the son of the Feng family was destined to not be on the same path as his daughter. Chapter 201. Lu Heng and Feng Jin were friends. In the past, when they met, they would talk about everything under the sun, or exchange opinions on politics. Now, they had another topic to discuss: Lu Heng's cousin, Feng Jin's good friend, Lu Lanting. The former had a secret brother complex, while the latter admired Jiang Pengji and treated her as a best friend. They had a lot to talk about. At first, Han Yu was just listening to them out of boredom. But after a while, he became more interested in the Lanting they were talking about. When Lu Heng heard Feng Jin say that Han Yu was Master Yuanjing's disciple, he couldn't help but be in awe. He looked at Han Yu with even more enthusiasm. His cousin was going to Langyi to study. If he could find out Master Yuanjing's preferences earlier, it might come in handy. With this in mind, Lu Heng tried to get more information from Feng Jin. Han Yu's lips curled into a smile, and he gave Feng Jin a meaningful look. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. He guessed that this was probably what Lanting meant by Brother Khan. Lu Heng had good intentions. He would just pretend that he didn't see it. I can understand that Yaoji loves her brother. It's just that teacher has already taken in his full number of disciples. I'm afraid he won't be taking in any more. Han Yu shook his head regretfully and said, but Langyi Academy still welcomes you. If you go to Langyi in the future, you can be my classmate. This time, Feng Jin, who was watching from the side, was surprised. Already full? Master Yuanjing has found the fourth person he has been looking for? This time, it was Lu Heng's turn to be confused. Why couldn't he understand what these two were saying? Feng Jin could not help but sigh when he saw that she was still puzzled. Yaoji, there's something you don't know. When Master Yuanjing took back the 3 cities and returned to Langyi County, he performed a divination for himself. He was destined to have 4 disciples. A few years ago, I heard that you had already accepted 3 disciples. I thought that with Lanting's talent, he would be the 4th disciple that you're looking for. I didn't expect that you already have 1. In terms of students, all the students in Langyi Academy could be considered as Yuanjing's students. However, there could only be 4 real disciples. Lu Heng's face was filled with disappointment. Although he belittled his cousin, he was still very proud of him. How could a student and a personal disciple be the same? For the former, Master Yuanjing only came out to give lectures occasionally, but for the latter, he taught everything he knew. AI. Lu Heng sighed, and then said somewhat open-mindedly, if I get it, it's my fortune. If I don't, it's my fate. However, I heard from Huayu that Master Yuanjing was painstakingly looking for his 4th disciple. This is really puzzling. He emphasized the word diligently. With Master Yuanjing's fame and talent, which scholar in the world would not go after him? Too many students had racked their brains just to meet Master Yuanjing. If they could be accepted as his disciple, it would be a blessing to their ancestors. Would Master Yuanjing still need to search for him? Simply absurd. However, he was not so sure after observing Feng Jin and Han Yu's expressions. Han Yu said, I had recommended Huayu to Master, but Master said that Huayu had another destiny in life and he was not fated to be with him. Master Yuanjing had a quirk when it came to accepting disciples. Not only did he want the disciple to be smart and have a temperament that suited his taste, but he was also particular about mysterious fate. Just as Lu Heng thought, after Master Yuanjing became famous, there were countless people who wanted to be his direct disciple. He could choose any outstanding talent in the world. What kind of student couldn't he find? Han Yu also wanted to give it a try, but he did not expect that Master Yuanjing would take the initiative to accept a disciple. After entering the sect, he had seen too many people who were praised by Master Yuanjing, but all of them failed at the last stage. They had another destiny and were not fated to be Master Yuanjing's disciple. To hell with the fate of master and disciple. If you don't accept disciples, how can there be the fate of master and disciple? Master Yuanjing only smiled and did not say anything about this resentment. He never explained anything. The first 3 disciples were accepted smoothly, but the last one had been hanging around for many years. He thought he could not find him anymore. Feng Jin was curious. Although Master Yuanjing's criteria for accepting a disciple were a little strange, and the last one was even more inexplicable, he could tell how much he valued this matter. The first 3 disciples were accepted quickly, but the last one was not easy to accept. Feng Jin was indeed curious. I don't know who the 4th disciple is. I remember that Wenbin wrote to me last time that Master Yuanjing was quite troubled about accepting disciples. Now that we met, he told me that the candidate has already been selected. I can't help but be curious. Speaking of the 4th disciple, Han Yu was also confused. He had not understood his master's intention. I have told Huayu about this person before. There are many young talents in Langyi Academy, and Master Yuanjing's disciples are among the best. There is only one person who is an exception. Han Yu frowned slightly. When I first arrived at Langyi County, I thought that person should be Master Yuanjing's disciple. Later, I found out that he was not. Not only was he not even a student of Langyi Academy, but Master Yuanjing specially allowed him to study here. Feng Jin thought for a while and suddenly remembered, the person you are talking about is the one with an unknown birth date and a very bad fate. Lu Heng was confused. What unknown birth date and a very bad fate? Han Yu nodded and said, that's him. Feng Jin was surprised. That person has been studying in Langyi Academy for 7 or 8 years. If Master Yuanjing had accepted him earlier, he would have been his first disciple. Why didn't he accept him for 7 or 8 years and only accepted him when it was almost time? Han Yu also asked his master about this question, and his master smiled meaningfully. Timing. Han Yu said, Master Yuanjing said that the timing was not right before, but now it is time. Feng Jin was speechless. Many famous teachers had quirks, and Master Yuanjing was definitely one of them. Lu Heng had to interrupt and asked, after listening to you for so long, I still don't know who the lucky person is. Wei Ci. After Master Yuanjing accepted him as a disciple, he named him Zixiao, Han Yu answered. Wei Ci? Wei Zixiao? He had never heard of him. Lu Heng searched for relevant memories, but there was no trace of this person. Then, why did you say that his birth date is unknown and a very bad fate? Lu Heng had a bad habit. If he didn't understand, he would want to ask. If he didn't ask clearly, his heart would itch uncomfortably. Han Yu's expression froze. It seemed that he was having a hard time talking about it. Lu Heng thought that Han Yu had encountered a problem. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly said, I am presumptuous. Please forgive me, Wenbin. Han Yu shook his head and said softly, there is no taboo. I am just afraid that others will have unnecessary fear and scruples toward Zixiao if I say it. The people of the world are ignorant and fear ghosts and gods. Just a small date of birth can create so many tricks, it is really a pity for Zixiao. If it weren't for Wei Ci's good luck, he might have been strangled to death by his family and thrown into the wilderness when he was born. Lu Heng heard this and didn't continue to ask. If he had asked, Han Yu might have told him, but it was not a gentleman's behavior to join in the fun. Chapter 202. Although he didn't see Lu Lanting, who was praised by Feng Jin, Lu Heng had left a good impression on Han Yu. Hey, 4th Langjun is back. Feng Jin and Han Yu came back together. They opened the curtain and saw a carriage parked in front of them. It was the carriage that Wu Majun had taken during the day. What a coincidence. Wen Bin and I got off at the same time. Obviously, Wu Majun had also noticed it. He was unhappy to see Feng Jin stepping on the stool and another person in the carriage. Wu Majun didn't like Feng Jin's family background. Feng Jin wasn't a member of the royal family. What right did he have to live a better life than him? What right did he have to be more talented and outstanding than him? Although he was polite to Feng Jin on the surface, he didn't respect him that much. However, when Han Yu stepped on the stool and came out of the carriage, Wu Majun's unhappiness disappeared instantly. He put on a faint smile, as if his previous carelessness and disgust didn't exist. Unfortunately, neither Feng Jin nor Han Yu were easy to deal with. To put it bluntly, among the three of them, except for Wu Majun, whose acting skills were a bit bad, the other two were going to be best actors in the future. Before Wu Majun could say anything, Feng Jin introduced Han Yu after greeting him. "This is my good friend. His surname is Han, and his name is Yu. He is Master Yuanjing's disciple." Feng Jin emphasized the words, "Master Yuanjing's disciple," hinting that Wu Majun shouldn't be so embarrassed that he couldn't move when he saw a beauty. Fortunately, Wu Majun wasn't hopeless. He immediately withdrew his eager eyes and adopted a reserved plan. Taking a step back in order to advance, he could first establish a good relationship with them. Yes, in this era of masculinity, men might not be completely safe. Han Yu saw the eagerness in Wu Majun's eyes. He felt a chill in his heart. The hair on his arm stood up and he got goosebumps. He suddenly regretted agreeing to Feng Jin's request. Wu Majun obviously didn't care about men and women. He didn't want to get himself involved. Thinking of this, Han Yu came up with a plan in his mind. He slowly revealed a sneer. However, in Wu Majun's eyes, it was a stunning beauty who was satisfied with him. He had to admit that it was a big misunderstanding. It made Han Yu feel nauseous. Wu Majun didn't like Feng Jin, but he didn't like Feng Jin being out of his control either, so he asked about his schedule. Feng Jin smiled faintly. He dealt with it flawlessly, and Wu Majun could not find any mistakes. "4th Langjun, have you made any progress in visiting the Lu residence today?" How could Feng Jin not see that the other party was trying his best to hide it? If it wasn't for the fact that he still had some brains, he would have already flown into the sky. He must have encountered something good. Wu Majun had already determined that Feng Jin had the intention of relying on him, so he did not hide anything from him. He revealed that Lu Shi had already relented and intended to betroth his daughter to him. Although she was only a concubine's daughter, she had a good father, money, and food. At the thought of Hu County, Wu Majun's heart began to beat faster. It was as if he could already see Lu Shi helping him ascend the throne. When Feng Jin heard that, he almost dropped the cup in his hand and spilled some tea. Wu Majun and Han Yu were quite surprised. It was normal for others to lose their composure, but how could Feng Jin lose his composure? Unbelievable. Han Yu smiled and closed his eyes to hide the surging speculation in his eyes. Could it be that the Lu family's daughter and Feng Jin had some unspeakable feelings for each other? Otherwise, according to Feng Jin's self-restraint, it was impossible for him to lose his composure so obviously. Wu Majun did not think of that, and Feng Jin, the person involved, felt even more wronged. He just did not react for a moment and thought that Lu Shi had agreed to marry Lu Shi. Thinking about it, Jiang Pengji, who was such an unbearable person, married Wu Majun like a daughter. He did not even dare to think about it. The scene was too beautiful. Feng Jin was shocked by his own speculation, and that was why he lost his composure. He quickly realized that the Lu family's daughter that Wu Majun mentioned should be the concubine's daughter, who had almost no presence in the Lu residence. If so, I have to congratulate 4th Lang Jun for getting his wish and bringing home the beauty. Feng Jin smiled frankly. There was no trace of hidden displeasure on his face, which made Han Yu, who was secretly observing him, confused again. However, I heard that the Lu family's daughter is not even 9 years old yet. When she is at the age of engagement, hee. I am afraid that 4th Lang Jun will have to wait for a long time. Wuma Jun also knew his daughter's age, but did it matter? Not to mention that she was only 9 years old. Even if she was 9 months old, he would agree to the marriage. He did not have the capital to win over Lu Shi. That old fox was too cunning. He had tried to fool him for a few days, but he had been fooled by him. If he became Lu Shi's son-in-law, they would be in a natural alliance. Even if Lu Shi did not support him, he would not support anyone else. Moreover, she was Lu Shi's only daughter, so there was no reason for Lu Shi to not care about her. Ordinary princes did not have to lower themselves like Wuma Jun did. However, who asked him to be in an awkward position? If he did not find a way to fight for it, he would not be able to make a comeback for the rest of his life. It doesn't matter. I will just marry her and respect her. Yes, it didn't matter to Wuma Jun. He wanted to marry the daughter of Lu Shi, not that person. If he married her, he would worship her as a shrine. He could not stop him from being a playboy, not to mention that she was not married yet. Seeing his attitude, Feng Jin sneered in his heart. He thought that Jiang Pengji had seen through Wuma Jun's nature. Who would feel at ease if their daughter married to him? He had just reached an agreement with Lu Shi to be his son-in-law, and now he was coveting Wenbin's beauty. What a scumbag. Wuma Jun wanted to talk to Han Yu through the night, but Han Yu's IQ and literature were much higher than his. There was nothing to talk about. I am surprised. Wuma Jun is so lustful. Why have I not seen him do anything to you after so many days of following him? Han Yu had nothing to talk about with Wuma Jun, but he had endless things to talk about with his good friend, Feng Jin, so they decided to share a room. Feng Jin said helplessly, "My beauty is like a jade pearl on a plate. How can I compete with Wenbin's beauty?" Han Yu was speechless. It was not the Feng Jin he knew who would say such sarcastic words. Who taught him to praise others in the open but to insult others in the dark? Jiang Pengji thought that Feng Jin was being sarcastic. Was it her fault? Han Yu did not want to show any weakness. He teased. Wuma Jun mentioned that he was going to be engaged to the daughter of the Lu family. Why did you lose your composure? Han Yu couldn't figure out Lu Shi's intentions. Forget it. My head hurts if I think too much. The two of them talked about their daily lives and learned about the things that had happened to each other over the years. They couldn't help but sigh. All of a sudden, Han Yu remembered Master Yuanjing's worries. Mister has been rather worried recently. The aristocratic families have already flourished to such an extent. If we don't restrain ourselves, I'm afraid something bad will happen. Both of them were still awake and were chatting to pass the time. Feng Jin sneered, "Rein in at the precipice? How could they do that?" It wasn't that no one had realized this problem. The point was that the aristocratic families were like a carriage that was slipping down the slope and they couldn't control it anymore. If the future ruler of the world is also a member of the aristocratic families, maybe we can continue our glory. But what if he isn't? Even if he is a member of the aristocratic families, who can tolerate the royal family being controlled by the aristocratic families? Or even lower than them? The aristocratic families have crossed the line. Han Yu was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Feng Jin to have such a bold idea. However, Han Yu couldn't refute Feng Jin's words. Nowadays, the royal family of Dongqing was the Wuma family, but the real helmsman was the 4 aristocratic families. Which of the important positions in each province and county wasn't from the aristocratic families? How many children of poor families were there? Dongqing had always emphasized culture and restrained martial arts. Their military was weak and almost all of them were lost in the battlefield in the north borderline. If the aristocratic families didn't agree, the emperor's order couldn't even be passed out of the Shangyang palace. Wasn't the royal family afraid of those aristocratic families? Afraid? Of course they were afraid. Who would feel comfortable if they had the world but couldn't enjoy the supreme power? However, the royal family of Dongqing had gradually fallen into a disadvantageous position in the open and secret battle with the aristocratic families. They couldn't be majestic at all. Fortunately, the interests of the aristocratic families weren't united. Each had their own conflicts. The royal family of Dongqing was also in a strange balance. They were muddle-headed in front of the royal family and kept thinking about taking back the power. They kept playing dirty tricks. As the legitimate son of the Feng family, it was not easy for Feng Jin to see the drawbacks so clearly. I didn't think about it before, but, after I came to Hejian and met County Chief Lu, I was suddenly enlightened. It was as if the fog in front of him was blown away by the wind, and he saw the truth. The chaos in Hu County was caused by natural disasters and sabotage, but the sabotage was greater than the natural disasters. Why did County Chief Lu persevere and even manage Hu County to its current state when others were troublesome and even lost their lives? While others were fawning over Lu Shi, few were willing to delve into the meaning of the problem. Was it because they didn't want to? Or was it because they didn't dare to? Lu Shi didn't exterminate the gentry in Hu County, and their lives weren't as easy as they used to be. They lived in fear and didn't dare to go overboard under Lu Shi's watch. But, would that be enough to prevent future troubles? Not necessarily. County Chief Lu has been promoted to the General Evaluation Officer. I think there will be other changes. For example, he will be promoted to the governor on the surface, but in fact, it will be to take Hu County from him. Do you know how many people are drooling over Hu County? If Lu Shi is no longer the county chief, or if he passes away and Hu County has a new governor, what do you think will happen to Hu County? Han Yu's mouth was dry. He didn't have to think to know the answer. Hu County was like a lamb that Lu Shi had carefully raised. It slowly grew up, became fat, and the wool on its body was thicker. Around it, there were countless greedy eyes staring at it. Once Lu Shi, the shepherd, was distracted or simply not around, the fat lamb would be plucked by the greedy demonic eye. Those who had a bit of foresight would probably keep the lamb and pluck it when it grew some hair. If the greedy people who couldn't wait for the wool to grow, they would probably kill the fat lamb. Han Yu said, in the end, County Chief Lu still cared about his identity as an aristocratic family, so he didn't kill all the aristocratic families to avoid future troubles. Their reason told them that it was best to kill all the aristocratic families, but they were all from aristocratic families. If the same problem was put in front of them, they would probably make the same decision as Lu Shi, or even a little softer. Han Yu frowned slightly. It seemed that he didn't like this heavy topic. What made him even more unhappy was that he knew he couldn't avoid this conflict in the future. Unless he was willing to give up all his knowledge and live in seclusion, no matter what happened outside. But was it possible? Chapter 204. Perhaps it was because he had something on his mind, he didn't fall asleep until the middle of the night. Then, he woke up on time according to his biological clock. The next day, seeing Wu Majun, Feng Jin said, "I'm afraid I can't stay in Hejian for more than 2 days." Wu Majun was stunned. He didn't know how Feng Jin knew what he was thinking. Wasn't it simple? Wu Majun stayed in Hejian to win the support of the aristocratic families. Now that he had the support of Lu Shi, the other aristocratic families didn't need to be so anxious. Instead of staying in Hejian County, it was better to visit the Wang family in Langyi. 4th Langjun, I hope you can make an exception and let me say goodbye to my friend Lanting and tell her that we will meet in Langi in the future. Wuma Jun was happy to see that happen. He already regarded Lu Shi as his father-in-law, so Jiang Pengji was naturally his brother-in-law. Feng Jin was his right-hand man, so it was beneficial for Wuma Jun to build a good relationship with his future brother-in-law. Feng Jin and Han Yu saw all the changes in his emotions. Both of them felt disdain and contempt at the same time. They were not afraid of being stupid, but they were afraid of being stupid and blind. Wuma Jun had already regarded Feng Jin as an aide and a subordinate that he could order around. That was ridiculous. What did Wuma Jun do to deserve Feng Jin's loyalty? However, they didn't say anything. They just went out together. One wanted to say goodbye to his new friend, and the other wanted to see what the legendary Lu Lanting looked like. They were lucky that Jiang Pengji didn't run around, but if they came a little later, she would have gone out too. Han Yu got out of the carriage and was about to step on the stool when he saw a familiar figure standing next to Feng Jin. They were talking happily. Han Yu was speechless. His eyes fell on Jiang Pengji's feet, which were wearing socks and wooden clogs. The scene from the day before flashed in his mind. Jiang Pengji had already noticed him when Han Yu was looking at her. It wasn't that she had sharp eyes and ears, but the enthusiasm in the streaming room had almost blown the roof off. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, ah. I watched the streaming video on Baidu yesterday. I thought it was a pity, but I didn't expect to see him in person. I was so excited that I wanted to shake his hand. It must be very smooth. Jiang Pengji sneered in her heart when she saw the bullet screen. Even though she was watching the live stream, there was still a screen between them. Dream on. Bayan Huakai, no. Host, give the handsome young man a close-up, magnified close-up. I want to take a screenshot and use it as a mural. He wasn't even dead yet, and they were already planning to hang him on the wall. Jiang Pengji ridiculed every bullet on the screen. She secretly glanced at Han Yu and found that he was also looking at her. Feet, Fei Shuang Dian Mo, I'm a newbie in the live broadcast room. I heard that the streamer can see through a person's underwear at first sight. Then, do you know the size of this handsome young man? What is your 3 measurements? I think his fingers are so beautiful. They would be perfect for playing the piano. Jiang Pengji almost laughed when she saw the bullet screen. If the other party hadn't reminded her, she would have forgotten about it. Host V, this young man is indeed very good looking, but if you think about the image of him taking off his pants to go to the toilet, or the image of him having constipation, I don't think he's so fairy-like. This kid has been suffering from excessive internal heat recently, and it's not good for his bowels. The audience in the live broadcast room, Jiang Pengji thought she could entertain herself by ruining other people's enjoyment of beauty. Host V, as for his size, I think the girl who has used him has the most right to speak. He's young, but he's already experienced a lot. He has 2 concubines who warm his bed. He's not messy, but he's not clean by the standards of your world. Jiang Pengji turned Han Yu's background upside down in the streaming room. Everyone looked at Han Yu and felt that he was a handsome, fairy-like young man. But when they saw the bullet screen that the streamer posted, they felt that it hurt their eyes. Streamer, why are you so cruel? Can't you just let them lick the handsome young man in peace? Xian, it hurts my eyes when I imagine the handsome young man squatting in the toilet with a conflicted face. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, hurts my eyes +1. The streamer is really a veteran in the field of teaching people tirelessly. Jiang Pengji could tease and tease the audience in the live broadcast room, but it was impossible for her to say what she said before. If she had a grudge against Han Yu, she wouldn't be merciful with her words. But now it seemed that Feng Jin's friend obviously knew Han Yu, so she couldn't tease him rudely. Feng Jin noticed the weird atmosphere between Jiang Pengji and Han Yu, and a guess came to his mind. Could it be that the two of you have already met? Jiang Pengji laughed in her heart. Yes, more than just met. Han Yu also laughed secretly. What a small world. Before I entered the city yesterday, I met Lu Langjun and had a brief conversation with him. Feng Jin was overjoyed and said, I guess it's fate. Jiang Pengji laughed. Doomed fate. However, it was just the beginning. There were surprises everywhere in life. For example, when Feng Jin introduced Han Yu's courtesy name to her, Jiang Pengji was strangely silent. She stared at Han Yu, as if she wanted to see through the layers of clothes and see through him. Han Yu subconsciously took a step back and said reluctantly, Lu Langjun, is there something wrong with my appearance? No, it's very neat. Jiang Pengji added, Wenbin, do you know a man named Cheng Yumo? Jiang Pengji had never thought that the man her father recommended to marry into her family would appear in front of her. It was fate. Han Yu was confused and asked, Lu Langjun, have you heard of Yumo? Jiang Pengji didn't answer but asked back, so, Wei Zixiao does exist? Han Yu then realized that there was something wrong with Jiang Pengji's words. Lu Langjun has never heard of them, so how do you know about them? I once dreamed that there was a fairy in the Jasper Lake. There was a fairy beauty taking a bath and burning incense. I wanted to go closer to ask her, but I heard someone call her Zixiao. The beauty answered and called him Yumo. Hearing the voice, I knew that the fairy was a man. Jiang Pengji described it vividly as if she had really had the dream. Both Feng Jin and Han Yu were stunned. However, the audience in the streaming room couldn't buy it. After all, they already knew how bad Jiang Pengji was. They would never be fooled. Lo Siji Lianmeng, I feel sorry for the confused young Feng Jin and Han Yu. They have been tricked by the streamer. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, sorry +1. Who would call their partners by their full names. The loophole in Jiang Pengji's story was that she accurately called out Cheng Yumo and Wei Zixiao's surnames. If they really knew their names from a dream, they couldn't call each other by their full names, could they? So, it was possible to know their first names, but not their surnames. Chapter 205. If that's the case, you also saw me in your dreams? Han Yu asked with a faint smile. He looked friendly, but there was a hint of judgment in his eyes. Who would believe such nonsense? Yes, another loophole in Jiang Pengji's story was that there was another person in it, Han Yu. If you paid attention, you would notice that she asked Cheng Yumo and Wei Zixiao in surprise after hearing Han Yu's courtesy name. If the story was not contradictory, then Han Yu should have appeared in her dream. Otherwise, she must have made it up. Jiang Pengji thought that Han Yu would be ashamed, but he nodded. Yes. It's a pity that the dream was hazy. I could only see the silhouette but not the face. I thought it was just a dream, but I didn't expect it to be real. The viewers in the streaming room were amazed by Jiang Pengji's acting skills. Jinxuan Ken Liang, I only admire the streamer's acting skills. She did it all in one take. It was such nonsense, but even she herself believed it. Life is like a drama. Even the streamer can win an Oscar if she depends on her acting skills. Xiaofan Cici, Oscar is nothing. No matter how good the best actor and best actress are, can they be 100% in character all day? Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, well, I know the streamer is lying, but she said it so confidently that I am beginning to doubt her. Even the viewers in the streaming room began to doubt their own judgment, let alone Han Yu who didn't know much about her. Han Yu's mouth twitched. He said in a stiff tone, so, it is fate that I met Lanting. Jiang Pengji readily accepted his advice and said, yes, such a fate, it will be a good story to tell. Feng Jin believed her and said with surprise, people say that what you think about in the day is what you dream about at night. But Lanting was born and grew up in Hejian County. She had never heard of the names of Wen Bin and the other two. Wei Zixiao's courtesy name was only recently given. Lanting could actually dream of such a scene. Maybe it was a sign of fate? If I go to Langyi in the future, I might be able to meet my dream friend. Han Yu was still doubtful, but he was more convinced after hearing what Feng Jin said. Although this speech was a little dreamy and romantic, it couldn't ignore the bigger picture. Let's rewind and take a look at what Jiang Pengji said. She saw a fairy beauty bathing and burning incense in the Jasper Lake. She wanted to go closer to ask, but she heard someone call her Zixiao. The beauty responded and called him friend Mo. In other words, the background was the bathtub. She was taking a bath. Han Yu couldn't imagine it. Zixiao was taking a bath in his dream. What was he doing in his dream? Although Lu Shi was a boy, a young boy who had yet to grow up, and the scene in the dream was still hazy, she could only vaguely make out the silhouettes of people. She shouldn't be able to see anything out of place, but she still felt that it was a little strange. Jiang Pengji took advantage of the fact that her body was still young, so she asked Han Yu. That person called Yumo really has a good temper. He's cautious and thorough in his work. He's honest and upright. Han Yu was deep in thought and replied subconsciously, of course. Yumo has a good temperament, and he is cautious and reliable. Master speaks highly of him. When he finished, he came back to his senses. He was more and more convinced of what Jiang Pengji said in the dream. Why did he believe it? Cheng Yumo was a nobody among all the students. He kept a low profile and his presence was almost non-existent. Except for a few close friends who knew about his talent and temperament, other strangers didn't know much about Cheng Yumo, let alone Jiang Pengji who was far away in Hejian County. But she could accurately point out Yumo's temperament and his biggest advantage. It was obvious that there was a basis for it. Now Han Yu was interested in Jiang Pengji's dream. He couldn't care less about the little knot in his heart. So, that Wei Zixiao. Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled and asked, is he really as beautiful as a beautiful woman? Han Yu was trying to listen to what she had to say. But he almost choked on his own saliva. He was being rude in front of others. Feng Jin was also speechless. Jiang Pengji looked like she was seriously asking for advice, which made it impossible for him to be annoyed. Han Yu said, didn't you say that you didn't see his face? Jiang Pengji put on an "I'm very innocent" expression. I didn't see his face, but I heard Wenbin tease him. He said that he accidentally left a sachet when he went out and it was found by a merchant. He took the sachet and asked the matchmaker to propose marriage. I think if he wasn't much more beautiful than a woman, he wouldn't have been mistaken for his gender. Jiang Pengji was the one who was lying through her teeth. But it had been a lie for so long that most of the viewers in the streaming room believed it. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan, ha ha ha, I don't know how traumatized he was when he was mistaken for a woman. Kalwa De Yi, I've been watching the streaming for a few days. I realize that the men in this world are a bit effeminate. They have flowers in their hair and powdered their hair. They are gentle and beautiful. If they look more androgynous, they will be easily mistaken for a man. The traumatized area should be infinite, right? Han Yu's white cheeks were a bit flushed. He seemed to be a bit nervous. You can't answer this question. If you see him one day and spill the beans, you will be the one to suffer. He shook his head decisively and kept the question a secret. But, Han Yu said, but what you said about Zixiao being teased in the dream might happen. But Zixiao doesn't like others to pay too much attention to his appearance. He always says that the appearance is given to him by his parents. Children can't choose whether they are beautiful or ugly. Isn't the essence of a skeleton? In this era, it was dangerous for a woman to be good-looking, but it was not necessarily safe for a man to be good-looking. A skeleton? Jiang Pengji smiled. This guy is interesting. How could he not be interesting? In this era, one's appearance affected one's fate as an official, and one's appearance was also an important criterion for being an official. But that guy said that appearance was not that important. Otherwise, he was just standing there and talking, pretending to be serious. Or he really thought so and he was quite aware of it. Han Yu knew that Jiang Pengji would leave for Langyi in a few months. He smiled and said, "If so, we will be classmates by then. But Lanting, you don't have to rush. You can go to Langyi in 3 or 4 months." Why? It was Feng Jin who asked. Han Yu said helplessly, "Huayu, did you forget that in 3 months, the students who passed the initial assessment will go to Shangjing for the final assessment? This year, there are many students who passed the preliminary assessment. Master Yuanjing may personally escort them to Shangjing. I remember that Lu County Chief is this year's General Assessment Officer. He will also go to Shangjing. If Jiang Pengji went to Langyi according to the original schedule, half of the academy would be empty. The most important thing was that Master Yuanjing would not be there." She thought for a while and said, "If so, I will go to Shangjing with my father. After the assessment, I will follow Master Yuanjing to Langyi. It will be on the way." Chapter 206. Feng Jin was visiting with his friends, so Jiang Pengji invited them to a banquet. She didn't go out to have fun, and the audience in the streaming room felt bored. They were used to the streamer's style of making trouble every day, but she suddenly became so elegant and serious. They were not used to it. It would be fine if there was good food. They could treat the streaming as a food show. They couldn't eat it through the screen, but they could enjoy watching it. However, the food on the table that the maids served was very ordinary. It didn't arouse their appetite. Kaowangdu, the development of food in this era is so backward. It feels like nothing. I don't have an appetite. Xiangguazi, I thought I would see a dazzling dish like Little Master Boy, and I would have a flash of inspiration after eating it. It turns out that I was thinking too much. Maitao, we don't have to eat delicacies, but the streamer shouldn't make it so shabby, okay? Gai Chongfan, it feels like a table of dishes in a small restaurant is better than the streamers. Jiang Pengji felt wronged. She couldn't control it. It was good enough to have something to eat. How could she be picky? She felt good now. She used to eat tasteless nutrient solution all day, but now she had a taste in her mouth. The audience in the streaming room kept complaining about the food. The dishes were monotonous, and the seasonings were lacking. How could a normal person eat it? Obviously, Feng Jin and Han Yu, as normal people, felt that the Lus were very attentive in terms of food. After eating and drinking to their heart's content, the maids took the table away. Jiang Pengji looked at Feng Jin and said, "When does Wuma Jun plan to leave?" There was a flash of surprise in Han Yu's eyes. If he remembered correctly, Feng Jin hadn't told him why he was here. If that was the case, how did this person know that Feng Jin was planning to leave? Feng Jin had experienced the same thing many times, so he was used to it. It should be tomorrow, if nothing goes wrong. Feng Jin knew too well about Wuma Jun's desire for quick success. Wuma Jun had already obtained Lu Shi's support, which was equivalent to having an inexhaustible supply of rice grains. In this era where food was more important than anything else, he would not panic if he had food in his hands. If he won the support of the Wang family of Langya and persuaded them to help him ascend the throne, the whole of Dongqing would be his. Jiang Pengji said sarcastically, "So urgent?" It seems that Wuma Langjun is also an impatient person. He can't wait. For the sake of one's life and future, it's normal to be a little impatient. Feng Jin didn't forget how many unknown forces they had encountered on their way to Hejian County. Not only did he not forget, but Wuma Jun, whose life had been hanging by a thread, also did not forget. If he didn't fight for the throne, he would die. From a prince's point of view, Wuma Jun's thoughts were understandable. Unfortunately, this person's vision was so narrow. So what if he ascended the throne? Would the 3 tribes of the north borderline give up their covetous eyes on Dongqing? Wouldn't the other 4 countries covet Dongqing? More importantly, did Wuma Jun have the ability to restrain the increasingly powerful and lawless family tycoons? Probably not. If he had such foresight, he would not have gone to the Wang consortium. Once he ascended to the throne with the help of the Wang family, the aristocratic families would have complete control over the royal family. Wuma Jun would only be a puppet emperor. If Dongqing wanted to continue the throne, they could not allow the aristocratic families to develop and expand unscrupulously. Feng Jin could not say these words, and he was not in the position to say them. He could only bury them deep in his heart. Although they were going to be separated the next day, neither Feng Jin nor Jiang Pengji were pretentious. They were still talking and laughing. It was just a temporary separation, not an eternal one. Without separation, how could there be the joy of meeting an old friend in a foreign land? On the way back, Han Yu looked at Feng Jin thoughtfully and said, "Huayu is very unhappy." Feng Jin closed his eyes. The situation is getting worse and worse. I really don't know how many times such a situation will happen. Han Yu was puzzled. He did not know where Feng Jin's worry came from. If the world is in chaos, Huayu can show his talents. Judging from Lu Langjun, he is not an ordinary person. Maybe in the future, you can have a friendship with him. Of course, if the 2 of them were to assist their respective kings, then they could only do their own things. Feng Jin heard that and the corner of his mouth twitched. He felt that Han Yu and Jiang Pengji were on the same side. Both of them had restless temperaments and loved to stir up trouble at the drop of a hat. Although the royal family of Dongqing was declining, it was not destroyed yet. Now they were thinking about chaos. How could the royal family endure it? It could be seen that in the eyes of the aristocratic families, the royal family of Dongqing did not live up to its name. With a soft sigh, he dissipated into the air and disappeared. The next day, Jiang Pengji got up early and went to the Fengyu Pavilion outside the city to bid farewell to Feng Jin. The weather had started to warm up, but there was a cold wind blowing from time to time, making people's clothes rustle. Looking at Feng Jin's back, Jiang Pengji, who was originally emotionless, felt a little emotional. When will we meet again? She did not know whether they would be enemies or friends the next time they met. Jiang Pengji kept her emotions in check. She put a finger to her lips and whistled. White was already running towards her. "Let's go." She got on the horse and held the reins with both hands. The carriages in the distance had become a small dot, and Feng Jin was nowhere to be seen. White snorted and galloped toward the city gate. Ever since the attack on the Mengs, Jiang Pengji liked the feeling of galloping more and more. "Second Langjun, the people from the carpentry workshop are here. They are waiting for you in the mansion." As soon as they got back, the gatekeeper came forward to take the reins. Jiang Pengji's expression was cold and displeased at first, but when she heard that someone from the carpentry workshop was here, her eyes suddenly lit up. It was as if there were the brightest stars in them, which made people happy. "Someone from the carpentry workshop? Where are they now? Take me there." Feng Jin was the first friend Jiang Pengji had made in this world, so he meant something to her. She did not show it on her face or say it, but she was still reluctant to leave Hejian County. However, compared to the big picture, these small sentiments were insignificant. The gatekeeper was also smiling and bowed. "He's waiting for you in the mansion. Don't worry, second Langjun." Jiang Pengji did not listen to the gatekeeper. She walked like the wind and the maids made way for her. To save time, she said, "You don't have to greet me. Go do your own things." She opened the door quickly but not rudely. A few craftsmen in linen clothes had been kneeling for a long time. No need for small talk. Just tell me how is the crossbow I asked you to make. Jiang Pengji sat down without hesitation and skipped the complicated etiquette of the craftsman. They looked at each other, and one of the craftsmen spoke on behalf of the craftsman. It's a success. Chapter 207. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pengji's streaming time was fixed. She would start streaming in the morning after waking up and washing up. She would stop streaming after dinner at night. If there were other special streaming tasks, she would adjust the streaming time according to the situation. It was the normal streaming time, and the streaming room was already filled with 10,000 viewers. Occasionally, someone would leave the room out of boredom, but another viewer would immediately fill in. Every trap in the streaming room depended on one's internet speed, hand speed, and luck. Qi Yun, compared to those innocent female protagonists in dramas, I like the streamer more. Especially when her eyes lit up just now. Really, it felt like she was electrified. That indescribable throbbing, as if she was electrified, Pianxian Dia Wu, I think that feeling should be hot-blooded, right? When Jiang Pengji's eyes lit up, the viewers in the streaming room always felt that it should be accompanied by aggressive and passionate background music. In an instant, it could stir up people's blood and make their pores open wide. Quick, let me have a look. Jiang Pengji was born in an era where weapons of war were extremely advanced. She had even piloted and commanded aircraft carriers, let alone other portable weapons. It could be said that unless she was in a more advanced interstellar civilization, there was no weapon that could amaze her. Obviously, such a thing could not exist in this extremely backward and conservative society. Of course, she did not need it. In this ancient era, as long as she had a weapon that was more advanced than the average, she would have a higher chance of winning in terms of hardware. Why use a butcher's knife to kill a chicken? It was a bold attempt to get the craftsman in the carpentry room to research the improved crossbow. Because of Jiang Pengji's order, the craftsman put in a lot of effort to research it day and night. How could they dare to neglect it? Seeing that she was so excited, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. After presenting the latest product, the craftsman carefully watched Jiang Pengji take it, afraid that she would accidentally hurt herself. Jiang Pengji's smile disappeared, and she seriously fiddled with the slightly rough-finished crossbow. The crossbow was bigger than she expected. The body of the bow was 3 feet and 3 inches long, and the bowstring was 2 feet and 5 inches long. The body of the bow was dyed dark brown, and one could smell the strong smell of paint when they got close to it. It was quite heavy in her hands, but it was not too heavy, and it was convenient to carry around. The craftsman had to figure out the materials for the overall structure, and Jiang Pengji only provided them with data. To be able to produce a finished product in such a short period of time, regardless of the final results of the experiment, this attitude was worthy of praise. Next to the finished crossbow were a dozen or so arrows of different shapes and painted black. They were very different from ordinary arrows. Most of the arrowheads had blood grooves engraved on them, and some of them even had up to 10. If the arrowheads pierced into the target, it was easy to imagine that they would dig deep into the flesh near the wound. Even if they were pulled out, they would pull out a large piece of flesh, making it seem rather cruel. But she liked it very much. These were the special arrows that she had designed based on the overall data of the crossbow. They were specially designed for this kind of composite crossbow. Each of them had their own advantages and were suitable for different terrains and environments. The length of the crossbow could be adjusted, and different arrows could be used to achieve different shooting ranges. The sighting device could also be disassembled. Because the damage rate was high, a disassembled sighting device could reduce the damage. However, these changes also increased the difficulty of materials and attacks. When Jiang Pengji designed the improved crossbow, she referred to many historical documents and the weapons in service in the military. If everything met her data standards, the range and penetrative power would be extremely terrifying. There were also a few military enthusiasts in the streaming room. When they saw the blood grooves on the arrowheads, their scalps went numb. Major General Wan Yin, oh my God, if this thing is shot into the flesh, it will take a lot of skin and bones to pull it out. Kao Wangdu, it hurts just looking at it. The streamer made such a cruel thing. It's too scary. Xiangguazi, the crossbow in the streamer's hand is different from the ones I've seen before. The craftsman watched Jiang Pengji fiddle around with the crossbow without any change in her expression. They could not help but feel anxious. Was she satisfied? Or was she not satisfied? While they were feeling anxious, Jiang Pengji put down the slightly large crossbow and asked, "Have you tried it?" The craftsmen shook their heads and lowered their heads. They were trembling with fear. "We were afraid that you would be too impatient, so we each took charge of a part of the crossbow. After a few experiments and searching for suitable materials, we did not let you down. After the initial model of the crossbow was completed, we rushed to send it over." That being said, the craftsmen were still very confident in the finished products they made. They tested countless materials and each took charge of a part of the crossbow. The materials they found all matched the data given by Jiang Pengji. "Each of you took charge of a part of the crossbow? That's smart. It's a very time-saving method." Yes, if they did not divide the work, they would not have been able to produce the semi-finished product so quickly. Yes, in Jiang Pengji's eyes, it was a semi-finished product. There were still many inadequacies, but they were not major problems. Because of that, she had a preliminary understanding and a good impression of the craftsman's wisdom in that era. Although the technology was extremely backward and the social atmosphere was conservative, it was undeniable that they were not stupid. They had the heart to explore. Jiang Pengji's design was very detailed. Every part of the crossbow was provided with reference data. Skilled craftsmen would be able to figure it out by experimenting. However, these craftsmen knew how to divide the work, which maximized efficiency and saved time. They were worth teaching. I'm flattered. If it wasn't for the detailed design, I wouldn't have been able to produce this thing even if I had 10 times the time. The craftsmen did not dare to take charge. Instead, they fawned over Jiang Pengji with fear. She smiled and said brightly, "Why are you so reserved? I'm not the kind of person who can't stand other people's glory. If it's your work, then it's your work. You don't have to be so careful. You did a good job this time, but there are still many flaws that need to be improved." The craftsman felt relieved and secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. It seemed that they had passed the test. The carpentry workshop was not an outstanding business under the Lus. The craftsmen were eager to be put in an important position. They did not want to repeat the boring and unskilled work all day long. Even if they were craftsmen, there was a hierarchy among them. Everyone had their own goals. Ever since they received the task from their Lang Jun, they had been working hard. If they did a good job this time, they would not be valued in the future. With that in mind, they mustered up all their energy and worked overtime just to attract Jiang Pengji's attention. Now that they looked at it, they had accomplished half of their goal. "Leave this crossbow. I'll test it and see where it's lacking. Then you can fix it accordingly," Jiang Pengji said. The materials used for the crossbow, the craftsmanship, and the original design are all confidential. You can't tell anyone, including your family. Chapter 208. There were also crossbows in this era, and they had been developed several times. However, they had many drawbacks. The shooting range was short, the crossbow was heavy, and it was inconvenient to carry. It also had certain requirements on the environment, or else it would be hard to maintain. The overall production process and cost were also high, due to various reasons, only a small number of people could afford to use these crossbows, and they were not widely used. Even if they were, Jiang Pengji would not like them. She played with the semi-finished crossbow in her hand. The crossbow arm, crossbow bow, bowstring, and crossbow mechanism barely matched the data given by her. After her improvement, the time needed to load the arrows was greatly reduced, which also improved the mobility and flexibility of the crossbow. I don't know the cost of the finished crossbow and the production time. If the cost is high and the production time is long, it is impossible to produce it on a large scale with the current manpower in the carpentry workshop. What's more, it is a secret that needs to be kept. I can't let more craftsmen participate in the production. Jiang Pengji pouted and frowned. She was not satisfied with the current situation. However, she did not have many people working for her now. Even if she equipped each of them with a modified crossbow, she should be able to afford it according to her family's wealth. To prevent the crossbow from attracting attention, Jiang Pengji wrapped it in a white cloth and left the Lu's house with a dozen arrows of different models. To the farm. The Lu's house was not suitable for testing the improved crossbow. It was not that she was afraid that the servants would leak the secret, nor was she worried that she would accidentally hurt others. It was just that the mansion did not have a spacious place suitable for testing. According to her calculation, the shooting range of the improved crossbow was a bit far. She did not ride a horse this time. She sat in the carriage and asked the groom to drive her there. With the help of Meng Han, the training of the troops was officially on track, and the effect was much more significant than before. After she got off the carriage, she saw a group of shirtless troops carrying a 3-foot-long log on their shoulders running past her step by step. At the end of the line was the petite Nongqin. She was also dressed in brown. She was sweaty and her lips were pale. Nongqin had obviously seen her. Her eyes were slightly twinkling, and she became more stubborn. Jiang Pengji curled her lips slightly. When she passed by, she heard her voice. If you are tired, you can stop and rest for a while. After all, you are a weak woman. She emphasized the word weak. Hearing this, Nongqin opened her eyes wide. However, after a moment, she gritted her teeth and ran past her with her head down. Her footsteps were heavy and slow. The cloth on her shoulder was worn through by the log, and her skin was bleeding. She looked very miserable. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji chuckled. Adjust your breathing and keep up with them. I'll wait for you at the drill ground. Hearing her words, Nongqin took a deep breath. Her footsteps became firmer, and she looked better than before. Meng Han had been following them and did not allow anyone to slack off. When he saw Jiang Pengji, he quickly stepped forward and saluted. Greetings, Lang Jun. You don't have to be so polite. I came here today because I have something to do. Tell them to go to the drill ground and wait after training. At that moment, Meng Han noticed that Jiang Pengji was holding a strange object wrapped in white cloth. It was shaped like a bow. Before he could guess, Jiang Pengji asked, "How is Nongqin's training these 2 days?" Meng Han said subconsciously, "Although she is a woman, she has amazing perseverance. I've taught some of the soldiers in the troop a lesson. But Nongqin seems to have something on her mind. She doesn't communicate with others. She still practices hard after training." If it was a man who was so eager to learn, Meng Han would only feel gratified and praise him as a hero. But Nongqin was a woman, and her determination to learn was stronger than that of a man. He could not help but admire her. After she came, someone must have said something bad in private. Jiang Pengji sneered and said calmly, "Nothing more than some derogatory words. Nongqin has been through a lot and her character has been shaped. It's a good thing that she practices hard. At least she doesn't cry." In Jiang Pengji's view, crying was a cowardly behavior second only to suicide. It was not worth advocating. Could crying solve anything? No, this would only encourage the perpetrator's arrogance and make him suffer even more. Nongqin was ridiculed and humiliated by others. She chose to immerse herself in practicing hard in order to get back at them instead of crying. This was a great improvement. Meng Han looked a little embarrassed. The people of Dongqing were open-minded, but in many people's minds, women should be related to needlework. Why did she have to train and do rough work like a man? Her skin was soft and tender, and her arms were as thin as bamboo poles. What strength could she have? After Nongqin came out of nowhere, there was indeed a lot of criticism. There were also those who liked to talk dirty. Nongqin's face turned red and white. Meng Han could say something when he saw it, but he could not protect her all the time. There were times when he could not take care of her. He said in a muffled voice, "I'm useless." Jiang Pengji sneered and said calmly, "What does it have to do with you? Nongqin trained hard and she will get back at herself. She doesn't need you to apologize. If you want to be recognized by others, you can only rely on your own strength. So what if you are a woman? Here, only fists matter. If you are too protective of her, it will only make others ignore her hard work. Just watch her. As long as she doesn't go too far, you don't have to care about other things." When Nongqin beat up everyone who looked down on her, who would dare to look down on her? If they still looked down on her, she would beat them twice. The troop was a place where fists mattered. Gender didn't matter at all. If gender mattered, then a man who lost to a woman was not even as good as a weak woman. If he could not even beat a woman, what was the point of training? He could just go home and pick up an embroidery needle and learn how to do needlework. TSK. A group of people who were itching for a beating. They all needed to be taught a lesson. When they arrived at the drill ground, Jiang Pengji saw Nongqin standing outside the crowd from afar. Her face was tense, and her sweat was covered with dust. Her eyes were sharp and guarded. A man tried to talk to her, but he could not speak because of her cold stare. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji went forward and said, "Do you see the archery target in the distance?" The area was used as a drill ground. Although the facilities were simple, it was large and convenient for training. When she asked questions, many answered sparsely. Only Nongqin's voice was loud and firm. "I see it." Jiang Pengji looked at the men who had grown stronger but were still a little undisciplined. Then she looked at Nongqin, whose face had become thinner. Chapter 209. Not only was Nongqin dumbfounded, but the other men were also speechless. The live streaming room was in an uproar. Xuanxiang Taisho, host, don't scare me. How can I hit the target from so far away? Fengji Liao Yuan, I believe the host can do it, but Nongqin can't do it, right? Han Yutong, I can see another girl who is about to evolve into a tough man. The audience in the live streaming room presented facts and reasoned that the possibility of Nongqin doing it was zero. It was not that they didn't believe it, but it was too unbelievable. Meng Han thought so too. With his eyesight, Jiang Pengji was at least 200 steps away from the target. Even a heavy bow of 1 pickle could not reach that distance. She needed a bow of more than 2 pickle. But 2 pickle. That was 200 kilograms, which was much heavier than an adult man. How could a weak girl like Nongqin draw a bow of 2 pickle? Can you do it? Jiang Pengji asked her. Nongqin was hesitant, but she made up her mind when she heard Jiang Pengji's question. Lang Jun, I can do it for you if you teach me. Jiang Pengji smiled. Smart girl, come here. I'll teach you. She untied the white cloth that wrapped the improved crossbow in her hand, and it fell to the ground, revealing the crossbow. Meng Han was stunned when he saw it. However, what surprised everyone was yet to come. Jiang Pengji whispered in Nongqin's ear, telling her how to use the improved crossbow. This crossbow has a strong recoil. When you use it, you must stabilize your lower body and learn how to release the force. If your lower body is not stable, the crossbow in your hand will deviate a little, which will cause you to miss the target. If the enemy doesn't die, you will. Jiang Pengji's voice was like a clear spring in the mountains, with a refreshing coldness that made people subconsciously focus their attention. Although the improved crossbow had a buffer and shock absorber, it could greatly reduce the instantaneous force of the arrow. However, this strength was still a bit strenuous for Nongqin now. You have enough time to aim at the target with the sighting device and balance your body. You don't have to be like a bow and arrow. You can't keep the bow and arrow open for a long time after pulling it back. Jiang Pengji helped Nongqin adjust herself and said with encouragement, "This is the right angle." As soon as she finished her words, an arrow flew out of the crossbow. Even though Nongqin was mentally prepared, she was still shaken by the strong recoil. She staggered and fell to the ground. Before she could get up, her ears were filled with exclamations. Nongqin was very lucky. Although the arrow didn't hit the bullseye, it still hit the target and cracked half of it. The viewers in the live stream all sent a string of exclamation marks. They seemed to be quite shocked. This distance was already more than 200 steps. Not to mention whether ordinary people could aim at something that far away, just the requirement of arm strength was enough to scare off a large number of people. However, right in front of everyone's eyes, it was actually shot through by a thin and frail woman, and it even blew up. The arrow didn't stop because of that. Instead, it flew for dozens of steps before it pierced into the ground. Seeing that, Meng Han rushed forward and picked up the improved crossbow that Nongqin had thrown on the ground like a treasure. Nongqin was also stunned. She saw a fair and clean hand with a fragrance of soap in front of her. "Get up." Nongqin bit her lips, pulled Jiang Pengji's hand, and suddenly stood up. She hurried forward to check on the target and was also shocked by the violent scene. Was this really done by her? Nongqin blacked out and her heart raced. She raised her hands in disbelief. Was this really done by her? People often described a marksman as a sharpshooter, but she turned around to have a look. The distance between them was more than 100 steps. Meng Han was the chief coach and the former county chief of the Mengs. Naturally, he could see how terrifying the improved crossbow was. He had seen crossbows before, but compared with the ones he had seen before, the one in front of him seemed especially terrifying. It was very light, and anyone with a little bit of strength could carry it. Besides, it could be pulled with the strength of the waist. Even a girl like Nongqin could use both her hands and feet, lean back, and gather all her strength to pull the string and put on the trigger. It was like a foot-mounted crossbow, using the strength of the arms, feet, and waist. However, the foot-mounted crossbow was different. The improved crossbow was a crossbow with arms, which was very convenient to carry and move. What made Meng Han's eyes brighten was that the recoil was very small, but the shooting range was really long. However, before he could finish his joy, he heard Jiang Pengji's cold words. Still not enough. A semi-finished product is still a semi-finished product. Meng Han held the improved crossbow in his hands and looked confused. Still not enough? He didn't know that Jiang Pengji's words contained a lot of information. She had a pair of sharp eyes. Nongqin had only tested it once, but she had already seen several areas that needed to be improved. Does Lang Jun want to equip everyone with this kind of crossbow? Meng Han suppressed the excitement in his heart. He couldn't wait to worship the improved crossbow in his hands. When the others heard Meng Han's words, especially the subordinates that Meng Han brought with him, their eyes lit up. Jiang Pengji said, "It's still a semi-finished product, and it needs to be further improved. Because it's difficult to make and the cost is high, I can't make one for each person. I will only give it to the best. As for the others, hee hee. She took the improved crossbow from Meng Hun's hands and pulled the string with her arms skillfully, unlike Nongqin. Bang! An arrow target exploded from the center. Jiang Pengji's body was as steady as a pine tree. She didn't even shake a bit. She continued to pull the string and load the arrow. There was another sound of the arrow target exploding. It was completely broken. Meng Hun just realized that Jiang Pengji didn't aim at all. Or in other words, when she looked at the target, she already knew that she could hit the target without deliberately aiming. What kind of terrifying eyesight and accuracy was that? In this world, there's nothing that can't be done. The reason why I can't do it is because I don't know how to do it. She put down the crossbow and looked back with a bright smile. At that moment, it was as if the sun in the sky was overshadowed by her smile. Nongqin felt hot in her heart. Her eyes were burning, as if there was an inexplicable force filling her limbs. She wanted to be like her Lang Jun. She pulled the string lightly, her body was as still as a pine tree, and her back was straight and unbent. It was as if she couldn't give in even if the sky collapsed. Yes, she was a woman, but so was her Lang Jun, who was younger than her. If she could do it, why couldn't she? Even if her current life was very difficult and the endless training made her physically and mentally exhausted, she felt very free and carefree. She couldn't imagine going back to her old life, and she didn't want to be forced to marry by her parents. She didn't want to live a mediocre life around a mediocre man, a group of noisy radishes, and a stove. Those muddle-headed, uneventful days had worn her numb. Could that be considered living? Strong thoughts filled Nongqin's mind, and she was obsessed. Chapter 210. Nongqin looked at Jiang Pengji firmly and knelt down. The wound on her shoulder was still bleeding and stained her clothes. Lang Jun, please teach me. Jiang Pengji looked at Nongqin with a faint smile. Nongqin felt uncomfortable under her gaze. After a long time, she said, "What do you think I can teach you?" Nongqin was stunned. She didn't understand what she meant. Jiang Pengji said, "You practice hard, you work hard, and you don't want to admit defeat. That's enough. What I can teach you is how to maximize your advantages and make your body stronger. You have to rely on yourself for the rest." Women were at a disadvantage because of their physical structure, but it didn't mean that women were weak. In Jiang Pengji's world, the Federal Army was roughly divided into 14 corps. The corps commander was the highest commanding officer and was directly under the command of the commander-in-chief. Each corps had different responsibilities. For example, the 7th Corps led by Jiang Pengji belonged to the first echelon. It could be said that apart from the commander-in-chief, the corps commander was the most powerful person. In Jiang Pengji's generation, there were 8 female corps commanders and 6 male corps commanders. In the Federation, the strong were respected, regardless of gender. Who could say that the corps commanders were weaker than the 6 male corps commanders because they were female? In fact, Jiang Pengji's personal combat ability could be ranked in the top 3 among the corps commanders. Physical structure wasn't absolute. It all depended on whether one had the desire to be strong. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn how to attack faster. If others are faster than you, then you have to learn how to kill them with one blow. If others are stronger than you, then you have to learn the art of war and how to lead troops to war. You should never focus on your own shortcomings. You don't have to compare your shortcomings with others' strengths. It's not necessary. Every word Jiang Pengji said made Nongqin's heart pound uncontrollably, as if something was about to break out of her cocoon. She said, "Get up. You came to me to teach you something. I should teach you something." Nongqin stood up. Her knees were covered in dust. "I will come to the farm every day for a while. It's up to you what you can learn." Jiang Pengji raised her hands and pinched Nongqin's limbs. She said seriously, "The condition of your muscles and bones is fine. Is there a massage after training? The massage list given by Jiang Pengji was not simple. It was prepared for military school students. It could maximize the effect of training, stimulate muscle nerve activity, and reduce the sequelae of the previous day's training. It could achieve twice the result with half the effort. After accumulating for a long time, those who were slightly younger would be able to further develop their bodies, effectively improving their physical qualities. Nongqin blushed and said in a low voice, "Yes, the head coach saw that I was suffering from training, so he asked the ant in the farm to learn to help me." Although that kind of full-body massage was very embarrassing, the effect was indeed very obvious. His muscles were sore and swollen, and he felt like he had soaked in a hot bath. She thought that she would be too tired to get up the next day, but unexpectedly, after a good night's sleep, her limbs were only slightly sore. This level of fatigue did not affect his training at all. Jiang Pengji chuckled and praised him. "Meng Han is very attentive. Go and treat the wound on your shoulder and apply some medicine." Nongqin replied respectfully. "In another half a month, it's going to be the corporal selection, right?" Jiang Pengji looked at the rules and regulations she had set. Indeed, there would be a selection of sergeants once a month. Meng Han said, "Yes, Lang Jun. Nongqin is also participating. Spread the word that whoever loses to her will have to wash the clothes of the troops." Meng Han opened his mouth and asked, although Nongqin is working hard, if she wants to win, she was at a disadvantage in terms of body size. Jiang Pengji said meaningfully, "It's not impossible. No one knew better than her how to kill a person in the shortest time. Even if she was at a disadvantage, she could still take the enemy's life. Since she was teaching Nongqin, how could she not teach her something practical?" Meng Han felt a chill down his spine. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong, but he could not tell why. Tsang Prefecture was one of the 6 prefectures and 21 counties in Dongqing. The trade route to the north was smooth, and it was closely connected to the northern borderline. The two places exchanged goods, which attracted many merchants to do business there. Thus, the local economy was booming, and Tsang Prefecture became the largest prefecture in Dongqing. However, that prosperity was gone forever. Today, Tsang Prefecture was filled with depression and decadence. From time to time, roving bandits would rob merchants. The once bustling trade route was no longer what it used to be. A few shabbily dressed people sat by the roadside. Occasionally, rows of soldiers in the Meng family's uniform could be seen patrolling the streets with guns in their hands. They looked solemn as they interrogated suspicious people who were in a hurry. They secretly embezzled money, bullied and humiliated the people, seized the goods of merchants, and took the opportunity to extort money. The checkpoints in and out of Tsang Prefecture, especially in Meng County, were heavily guarded. Because of the bandits killing and robbing, the people had to leave their homes and stay at the city gate. They were in groups of 2 or 3. Their clothes were old and tattered, and they were emaciated. Their eyes were numb. These damned beasts! A white-haired old beggar covered his face and sobbed as he avoided the soldiers. He was holding a skinny child in his arms. Upon closer inspection, the child's face was pale. There were a few bruises on his face. His eyes were closed and he had stopped breathing. The little beggar was picked up by the old beggar. He had been raised since he could speak until he was 12 years old. The old beggar thought that he would have someone to rely on for the rest of his life. Unexpectedly, his grandson was hungry and went out to beg. He accidentally dirted the shoes of a Meng family soldier and was beaten to death by him. How could this be the guardian of Dongqing and the people? They were obviously a group of jackals, wolves, tigers, and leopards in human skin. They were evil spirits from hell. "What are you scolding, you old bastard?" A soldier with sharp ears heard some noise and walked forward while cursing. The old beggar decided to go all out. He spat at the soldier and said, I'm scolding you bastards." After a while, there was a pool of blood on the roadside. An old beggar with several holes in his body was lying next to the body of a little beggar. The refugees at the side were already numb. Their eyes were like wooden beads. They didn't move at all, just like wooden statues. At this moment, the crisp sound of horse hooves could be heard from outside the city gate. The originally arrogant guards were like mice that met a cat. They became flattering and respectful, nodding and bowing. The person on the horse ignored the chaotic people and directly galloped into the city. "I have something to report to the county chief. Pass the message quickly." Chapter 211. The man staggered off the horse. His legs were unstable and he almost tripped on the ground. He looked like a mess. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lower lip, slightly relieving the stinging pain from his chapped lips. His bloodshot eyes were wide open as he knelt on the ground. While secretly slowing down his breathing, he secretly thought about the speech he had prepared before. After a long time, the sound of rustling footsteps could be heard from afar. That person hurriedly pinched his thigh, using the pain to dispel his drowsy consciousness. His chest was beating like thunder, and the powerful heartbeat was extremely clear in his ears. He lowered his head and saw a greenish-brown figure pass by him. The figure went straight to the seat of honor and sat down. There was a sweet smell in the air. Even though Meng County was in chaos, Meng Zhan, the leader of the Mengs and the county chief of Meng County, still lived a delicate life. After a while, the man on the seat of honor asked him, "Has Second Lang Jun arrived in Shangjing?" His voice was calm and steady for his age. His tone was elegant and graceful, as if he was reciting a poem. This kind of tone was popular in the past 2 years. It was a popular fashion among the aristocratic families. Many people purposely followed it and tried to be cultured. Some people learned it and sounded pretentious, like a male duck with a hoarse voice. People who didn't know better would think that the person had a problem with his voice. Some people had a unique voice. Their tone seemed to be tailor-made for them. Once they opened their mouths, they sounded elegant. Meng Zhan belonged to the latter. Many aristocratic ladies in Zhangzhou secretly praised him for his elegance. He could suck people's souls away when he opened his mouth. The face of the squire on the ground darkened. He knocked his head on the ground. The sound was deep and powerful. Even the ground trembled. The squire's blood drained from his face. His face was as white as paper. He knocked his head on the ground, but his fingers were still shaking. His palms quickly secreted sweat, which soon became damp, revealing the uneasiness in his heart. "I'm useless. I couldn't do what you asked of me." Second Lang Jun. Second Lang Jun was captured by that traitor, Meng Hun. Meng Zhan's eyes turned cold. He threw the teacup in his hand. It hit the squire's forehead and the hot tea splashed on his face. Second Lang Jun was captured by Meng Hun. He opened his peach blossom eyes slightly, and the corners of his eyes were slightly raised. He asked in a sinister tone, "I sent a team of you there, but you couldn't even protect the Second Lang Jun. What use do the Meng family have for you pieces of trash?" The squire, who could be arrogant in front of ordinary people, and even the Hejian county chief, didn't dare to defend himself. As Meng Zhan's squire, he knew what was right. Arguing would only make Meng Zhan even angrier and angrier. There was a wound on his forehead, and blood was flowing out. The tea stains mixed with the blood were all over his face, but he didn't dare to raise his hand to wipe it off. After waiting for a while, Meng Zhan's anger had cooled down a little. The servant said in a trembling voice, "Please don't be angry, Laoi. It's not that I didn't protect Second Lang Jun to the best of my ability. It's just that Meng Hun and his gang are too cunning and insidious. He was the leader of the Mengs and the Meng county chief's man." Meng Zhan could understand something as simple as this. He was the leader of the Mengs and the Meng County chief's man. He could see something as simple as this. If Meng Liang was already dead, this cowardly squire wouldn't dare to return to Meng County. He would have run away. You are wise, Meng Zhan. That traitor wanted to take second Lang Jun as a hostage to extort money. I was afraid that the traitor wouldn't treat second Lang Jun well, so I rode fast. I exhausted more than 10 horses to come back and report the news to Meng Zhan. He took out an object wrapped in silk and held it above his head respectfully. Please examine it, Meng Zhan. Meng Zhan winked at the maid beside him. The silk package was presented to him. He opened it. There were 2 scrolls inside. One was written by Meng Liang. It sounded proud and full of disdain for Meng Hun's actions. The other was written by a stranger. It simply stated that they didn't have to kill Meng Liang, but Meng Hun had to fulfill their demands. He. Meng Liang only said he would give 500 dong, but this scroll changed it to 2,000 dong. Born as a peasant, he is short-sighted. Meng Zhan threw the letter aside. His eyes were full of disdain and contempt. The head of the entourage swallowed and said, Master, the grain. Are we really going to give it to him? Meng Zhan said casually. His peach blossom eyes were filled with arrogance. Of course I'm going to give it to him. The head of the entourage was shocked. It's only 2,000 dong. Only a peasant like him would value it so much. Meng Zhan snorted and said coldly, follow my order. Go to the granary and transfer 3,000 dong. Send a team to deliver the grain. Do everything for second Lang Jun's safety. As long as he takes the grain, we'll forget everything. Just take it as my final farewell fee for him as the boss. The head of the entourage was stunned. 3,000 dong of grain? Give it all to Meng Hun. Meng Hun was asking for an exorbitant price, but he only asked for 2,000 dong. Meng Zhan saw that the head of the entourage was confused. He laughed inside and didn't bother to explain. Why did Meng Hun betray the Mengs? Why did he burn down the rearguard commandery? Why did he chase after Meng Liang for thousands of miles? Wasn't it all in the name of revenge for his wife and daughter? Now, 2,000 dong was enough to make Meng Hun give up killing Meng Liang. What did it mean? It meant that the innocence and even the life of his wife and daughter could be bought off with 2,000 dong of grain. That was the price. If that was the case, as his old boss, he should be more generous. Meng Hun sold his wife and daughter, and he was kind enough to give an extra 1,000 dong. It seemed to be a generous gesture, but it was actually disdain and humiliation. 3,000 dong of grain was not even a drop in the bucket for the Mengs. If Meng Hun dared to take the grain, the Mengs would spread the news when Meng Liang was safe. From then on, the man who wanted to avenge his wife and daughter would become a liar. He would sell them all for some grain. When the lady in the backyard heard that Meng Liang had been caught, she was worried and frightened at first, but she soon calmed down. She gracefully picked up a pastry and said with disdain, "This is how the lowly people are born. They have no backbone. They would do anything for a grain. This is considered selling their wife and daughter. If you knew this would happen, why did you do it? If you lost your wife and daughter, you could just remarry and have another child. You made such a big fuss that you lost your position as the county commandery. You made my son suffer, and made Lang Jun work so hard for Meng County. Meng Hun's wife and daughter were just lowly people. How could they be compared to Meng Liang, who was of noble blood?" She didn't even blame the mother and daughter for tarnishing Meng Liang's reputation. Achoo! Meng Hun sneezed and raised his hand to pinch his itchy nose. The 2 troops around him stared at him. Chapter 212. Meng Hun looked around and made sure everyone was on standby. He was satisfied and was about to reply to Jiang Pengji. As the saying goes, a gentleman doesn't stand under a dangerous wall. How can you put yourself in danger? Su Ku was getting more and more patient with his stubborn Lang Jun. He couldn't change her mind. Jiang Pengji was dressed in dark brown with simple decorations. She looked like a capable and experienced fighter, not a noble child of an aristocratic family. She sat on the ground and looked at Su Ku with a faint smile. Xiaoyu, you're becoming more and more like a housekeeper. You know that I'm not weak. If it weren't for the sake of training these inexperienced brats, I could have killed all the bandits in the village by myself. She said it with great enthusiasm, but Su Ku felt like his brain was going to explode. He had to persuade her. I admire your extraordinary martial arts, but it doesn't mean you have to fight in person. You just need to guard the rear and give orders. As the saying goes, a rich man doesn't sit under the eaves, and a rich man doesn't ride a horse. It's fortunate that you don't take advantage of danger. Even a random punch could kill an old master. Knives and swords had no eyes. What if Lang Jun was accidentally hurt by those outlaws? Jiang Pengji smiled. Don't argue with me. I understand, but I just don't want to do it. As soon as he said that, Su Ku looked as if he had nothing left to live for. The viewers in the live stream burst into laughter again. They really felt sorry for Su Ku. Su Huansheng, haha, I'm quick. I think I can add a sentence to Su Ku's expression, I'm so angry. What can I do? I'm helpless. To be honest, Su Ku might even want to jump ship to a boss as difficult as the streamer. Gong Sun Siyun, he can't. Su Ku's contract is still in the hands of the evil streamer. He'll be squeezed dry for the rest of his life. Dashu Xiaobing, contract? TSK, TSK, TSK. Evil landlord. I support Su Ku's rebellion. Paid axing, what's the use of support? Just send some gifts. Maybe the streamer won't be so evil if she's in a good mood. As if responding to Paid Axing's words, a series of gifts popped up in the background of the system. There were so many gifts that the entire screen was flooded. Lo Cg Lianmeng, TSK Tisk, why don't I like hearing this? He said, I've been following this live stream for more than a month, but I've never seen a streamer ask for a reward or trick the audience into asking for a reward. If you say that, it seems like the host is very scheming. Patrick Star, I didn't mean to say that the streamer is scheming, I was just saying, Jiang Pengji never asked for tips, nor did she play any tricks. If the audience liked to tip, they would tip. If they didn't like it, they would just watch the stream quietly. Even so, the amount of tips still increased as the stream went on. Slowly, it showed a terrifying trend. In the face of the tide-like rewards, the system was so happy that it couldn't find the north. The more tips Jiang Pengji received, the more points of popularity it would receive. After all, the system and the streamer would split the points equally. It was a pity that Jiang Pengji did not adopt the few tricks that it had set up. If she had, the rewards would have been 10 times more than what she was getting now. While he felt that it was a pity, he was also drooling as he looked at the endless stream of rewards. Jiang Pengji said to the system in her mind, you can start the semi-interactive live stream mode now. Just hang up the topic that I've set. As soon as she finished speaking, the system diligently did as she was told. The next second, all the audience saw a subtitle in the live stream room, Bandit Suppression in the Deep Mountains, 1. That was the theme of the task of the semi-interactive live stream mode, Bandit Suppression. Meng Hun did not let her down. Under his leadership, all the troops' training was on the right track. The troops, which were originally unskilled and undisciplined, were starting to take shape. After a month of hard training, everyone's physical fitness had improved to different extents. They were much weaker than the regular troops, but compared to the motley crowd of bandits, they were definitely much stronger. Lang Jun, how can you be so capricious? Su Ku had lost count of how many times he had sighed because of Jiang Pengji. Anyway, it's not the first time. You'll get used to it. I cherish my life, and ordinary people can't hurt me. Jiang Pengji smiled at him and comforted him. Xiaoyu, you should have some confidence in me. If this motley crew is worthy of me cowering and seeking protection behind them, how can I achieve great things in the future? From now on, the battle will only be bigger than now. It was just a small fight, but Su Ku kept nagging. What would happen in the future? Even though Su Ku had a lot to say, he was like a deflated ball in front of Jiang Pengji. He was speechless. At that moment, the tall and sturdy Meng Han came in and said to Jiang Pengji, "Lang Jun, everything is ready." "Well, I see." After that, Jiang Pengji took out 2 rolls of coarse cloth from her sleeves and spread them out. Between the 2 rolls of coarse cloth, the larger one had an irregular shape. On it was a geographical map drawn by charcoal. It was the mountains and streams near Hejian County. In addition, there were many symbols with different meanings on it. It was so densely packed that it dazzled people's eyes. "This place is our next target." I secretly went there to investigate and drew a rough map. After that, Jiang Pengji spread out the other roll of coarse cloth. On it was a map of the bandit village and the distribution of the people at each checkpoint. Jiang Pengji had just informed them yesterday that she would take some people to suppress the bandits. Time was very tight. It would take a lot of time just to pack things and prepare food. Meng Han was worried that his Lang Jun would act recklessly and wanted to have a good talk with her in private, but he didn't expect that she had made thorough preparations. Meng Han stared at the detailed map of the bandit village like a tiger. He was fascinated by it and simulated the action and tactics in his mind. Su Ku was the only one who paid attention to something else. His face darkened and he asked, "Lang Jun, did you say that this is the map you found yourself?" Meng Han clapped his hands and said, "This way of drawing is indeed very clear." "If it is used as a scout," Su Ku interrupted him coldly, "this is not the point. The point is, when did you go into the mountains alone to find out the details of the bandits' village? It was more dangerous than going out to suppress the bandits herself." Meng Han was stunned. He finally understood why Su Ku looked so pale. The map on the coarse cloth was drawn by Jiang Pengji herself. What did that mean? It meant that she had gone into the mountains alone to find out the strongholds of the bandits' villages one after another. Facing Meng Han and Su Ku's disapproving eyes, Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. She was not alone. Didn't she have 10,000 experienced viewers in the live streaming room? Moreover, she had done this kind of pioneering work countless times in the past. She didn't have to go deep into the bandits' village. She had her own ways to get information. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.